Part 1. The Rising Tide. Chapter 1. A Pirate's Ambition. The sea roiled with a restless energy, waves crashing and foaming as if stirred by some unseen force. Above, the sky was a masterpiece of colors, deep purples bleeding into golds and fiery oranges as the sun made its slow descent. The horizon blazed with a molten light, each ripple on the water catching the last rays of the dying day, turning the ocean into a shimmering field of liquid fire. The air was thick with the scent of salt and adventure, a promise of what lay beyond the vast, endless expanse of water. The sea serpent cut through the churning waves with a deadly elegance, its prow slicing the water like a blade through silk. The ship was a formidable sight, its hulls dark and weathered from years of weathering storm and skirmish, each scar a testament to battles fought and victories won. The billowing black sails stretched taut against the wind, their dark fabric rippling like the wings of a great raven, ready to take flight. Every creak of wood and snap of rope spoke of the ship's power and resilience, a vessel born to conquer the seas and all who dared challenge it. At the helm, Captain Mara Hawke stood with a commanding presence, her eyes sharp as they scanned the horizon, ever watchful. The wind played with her long dark hair, sending it whipping around her face in wild tendrils, yet she remained unyielding, a figure of strength and resolve against the twilight sky. Her posture was one of assured authority, every line of her body reflecting the unrelenting ambition that drove her. With the sea before her and the wind at her back, Mara embodied the spirit of the sea serpent, fierce, untamed, and relentless in pursuit of her destiny. Mara Hawke was a name that stirred both awe and dread across the seas. She was no ordinary pirate, but a living legend, her very existence woven into the fabric of maritime folklore. From bustling ports to the most isolated outposts, her tales were whispered with a mixture of reverence and fear, passed around in hushed tones over mugs of ale in dimly lit taverns. To many, she was more myth than mortal, a figure whose exploits seemed too extraordinary to be true. Yet every sailor worth his salt knew better than to dismiss the stories of Captain Hawke. Her cunning was unmatched, a trait that had saved her and her crew from certain death on more than one occasion. Mara had a gift for strategy, able to outthink and outmaneuver even the most formidable naval fleets that sought to capture her. She could read the winds and tides as easily as others read maps, turning the very elements of the sea to her advantage. But it wasn't just her mind that made her feared, it was her audacity. While others hesitated, weighing risks, Mara charged headfirst into battles with a fearlessness that bordered on reckless. It was this bravery, this unflinching willingness to face danger that set her apart from other captains, earning her a reputation as someone not to be crossed. Her reputation was not just built on her daring alone, but also on the sharpness of her blade and the quickness of her wit. Mara's mind was as lethal as her sword, both home to a razor's edge by years of life on the unforgiving seas. She had carved her name into history with the blood of her enemies, and with each victory, the legend of Captain Mara Hawke grew. Yet it wasn't fear alone that bound her crew to her. It was loyalty, fiercely earned. Her men followed her not just because they feared her wrath, but because they respected her skill, her courage, and her unwavering determination to lead them to glory. In Mara, they saw a leader who was both ruthless and just, a captain who would fight alongside them to the bitter end. The crew of the Sea Serpent was a ragtag band of misfits, each one with a past as turbulent as the seas they sailed. They were outcasts and rogues, men and women who had been cast aside by society, but on this ship they found a place where they truly belonged. Mara had handpicked each member with meticulous care, not for their pasts, but for the unique skills they brought to her crew. From seasoned navigators with an uncanny sense of direction to fearless fighters who could hold their own in the fiercest of battles, every crew member had a role to play. Their differences, which might have been weaknesses elsewhere, became strengths under Mara's command, blending together into a formidable force. Despite their rough edges and checkered pasts, the crew had a deep respect for Mara Hawke, a respect that went beyond her prowess in battle. They admired her not just for her strategic brilliance and the way she could outthink their enemies, but for the way she led them with an iron hand that never crushed. Mara was a captain who demanded discipline, and she enforced her rules with a strictness that brooked no argument. Yet beneath that stern exterior lay a surprising well of compassion. She understood the hardships of life at sea, the constant battles against the elements, and the relentless pursuit by those who sought to bring them down. Mara balanced discipline with an understanding that forged a bond stronger than any shackle. To Mara, her crew was more than just a means to an end. They were her family, a brotherhood bound not by blood but by the shared life on the high seas. She knew that a ship was only as strong as the men and women who sailed it, and she treated her crew with a loyalty that mirrored their own. Under her leadership, the Sea Serpent was not just a ship, but a home, where everyone played their part and watched each other's backs. The bond they shared was forged in the fires of countless battles, tempered by trust and strengthened by the knowledge that, come hell or high water, Mara would be there to lead them, and they would follow her without hesitation. As the wind tugged at her long, dark hair, sending strands dancing wildly around her face, Mara's thoughts drifted away from the present, carried on the same breeze that filled the Sea Serpent's sails. The years behind her were filled with battles won, treasures claimed, and a name that struck fear and respect in the hearts of sailors from one end of the world to the other. She had built her reputation meticulously, each victory adding another layer to the legend of Captain Mara Hawke. Her wealth was vast, her ship feared, and her command undisputed. But even as the sea whispered her name, it wasn't enough to quell the restlessness that gnawed at her. Mara's ambition was a relentless force, a fire that blazed within her, unquenchable and insatiable. She could feel it burning in the depths of her soul, pushing her ever forward, always reaching for something just beyond her grasp. She had conquered the seas, outwitted the most cunning of foes, and amassed a fortune that most could only dream of. Yet still, her heart yearned for more. The satisfaction of past victories was fleeting, a momentary calm before the next storm of desire took hold. Mara was not one to rest on her laurels. The horizon always beckoned with the promise of greater challenges and untold riches. For Mara, the future was a blank canvas waiting to be filled with new conquests and glories. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more daring than the last. The treasures she had collected were mere stepping stones on the path to something greater, something that would finally satiate the fire within her. If such a thing were possible, but deep down she knew that her ambition was a double-edged sword, driving her forward but also isolating her from the simple Still, she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Not until she had claimed the ultimate prize, whatever that might be. For Mara Hawke, the chase was everything, and the future held the promise of more. To conquer, to command, and to carve her name even deeper into the annals of history. Mara's reverie was abruptly broken by the rhythmic thud of boots against the wooden deck, the sound slicing through the murmuring of the wind and the distant crash of waves. She turned her head to see Finn striding towards her with the purposeful gait of a man accustomed to commanding respect. Finn's presence was as commanding as it was reassuring, his tall, muscular frame cutting a striking silhouette against the backdrop of the setting sun. The dim light caught the angular lines of his face and the solid bulk of his shoulders, casting long shadows that seemed to echo the strength and reliability he embodied. Finn's calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the ferocity he displayed in battle. His eyes, a deep, unyielding blue, held a tranquility that spoke of years of experience and discipline. Yet, beneath this serene exterior lay a fierce warrior who had fought with unparalleled bravery at Mara's side. His hands, calloused and strong, had wielded swords and pistols with precision, and his loyalty was a bedrock upon which Mara had built much of her success. Finn had proven time and again that his calm was not a weakness, but a shield that masked the steeliness of his resolve. The bond between Finn and Mara was forged in the crucible of countless skirmishes and perilous encounters, where their fates had intertwined in a dance of survival and mutual respect. Each battle they faced together had strengthened their connection, turning what began as a mere professional alliance into a deep-seated loyalty that went beyond the call of duty. Finn's unwavering support was not just a testament to his character, but a reflection of Mara's own leadership. In him, she found not only a trusted first mate, but a steadfast companion whose loyalty had been earned through shared hardships and victories. "Captain," Finn said, his voice steady, "we're nearing the island." Mara's response was a subtle nod, accompanied by a faint, enigmatic smile that hinted at secrets known only to her. The smile was fleeting but spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgment of the excitement simmering beneath her poised exterior. Her gaze remained fixed on the horizon, where the outline of the island Finn had mentioned was just beginning to emerge from the mist. This island was no ordinary landmass. It was rumored to be the resting place of an ancient treasure shrouded in mystery and lost to time. To the world, it was a legend, but for Mara, it was a tantalizing reality. Months of relentless pursuit had led her to this moment. She had scoured old maps and ancient texts, delving into forgotten archives and chasing down elusive leads. Each clue she uncovered was a piece of a grand puzzle, and every whisper and half-truth she followed was a thread in the intricate tapestry of her quest. Her journey had been one of both perseverance and cunning, testing her resolve as she pieced together the fragments of a story that spanned centuries. Now, the culmination of her efforts was within reach, a treasure that had eluded countless others but was finally within her grasp. The promise of the treasure was more than just a glittering prize. It represented the pinnacle of Mara's ambition and the ultimate test of her prowess as a pirate. Discovering it would not only fulfill her long-held desire, but also solidify her place in history as the most powerful pirate to ever sail the seas. The treasure was said to hold unimaginable wealth and ancient artifacts, the likes of which could elevate her status beyond that of any rival or enemy. With the island drawing nearer and the treasure so tantalizingly close, Mara's heart quickened with anticipation, knowing that success would not only satisfy her burning ambition, but also reshape her destiny forever. "Good," Mara replied, her eyes glinting with anticipation. "Tell the crew to prepare for landfall. This treasure will be ours, and with it, we'll command the seas like never before." As Finn turned and walked away, his determined strides echoing on the deck, Mara's focus shifted back to the distant horizon, where the island loomed ever closer. The fading light cast a golden sheen over the water, a deceptive calm before the storm of challenges that lay ahead. Mara's mind was already racing through the myriad of obstacles she might face. The treasure she sought was not just a prize, it was a beacon of danger and intrigue. She knew well that it would be protected by perils both seen and unseen, ancient traps laid by those who had hidden it, and rival seekers who would go to great lengths to claim it for themselves. The thought of these dangers did not daunt Mara. Rather, they intensified the fire of her ambition. Each potential threat, every hidden trap, was a challenge she was eager to confront. She had navigated treacherous waters and faced down formidable enemies before, and she understood that the path to greatness was never paved with ease. The dangers awaiting her were merely the next test in a series of trials she had come to expect. To Mara, the anticipation of these trials was as thrilling as the prospect of the treasure itself. Her reputation had been built on her ability to turn adversity into opportunity, and she had no intention of faltering now. Mara's resolve was unshakable, her mind steeled against the trials that lay ahead. She had climbed to the top of her world, not by evading risk but by embracing it, using each obstacle as a stepping stone to greater heights. As the ship cut through the waves, drawing ever closer to the fabled island, Mara felt a surge of exhilaration. The challenges before her were the very essence of the adventure she had sought all her life. She welcomed the uncertainty, knowing that it was through confronting and overcoming the greatest dangers that she would secure her place in history and achieve the legacy she had always desired. Captain Mara Hawke stood resolute, her gaze fixed on the approaching island, the very embodiment of determination and unyielding ambition. Her presence was electric, charged with a fierce resolve that set her apart from the countless pirates who sailed the seas. To Mara, the challenges that lay ahead were not merely obstacles, but opportunities to cement her status as a legend. Her reputation was not just a collection of stories and myths, but a testament to her relentless pursuit of greatness. She was driven by an ambition that defied limitations, a fire within her that burned with an intensity that could not be quenched by mere trials or adversaries. With every passing moment, the island loomed larger on the horizon, its silhouette becoming clearer against the darkening sky. Mara could feel the thrill of the hunt surge through her, an exhilarating rush that heightened her senses and sharpened her focus. The prospect of treasure and glory was no longer a distant dream, but an imminent reality, and the thought of what awaited her on that enigmatic land stirred a deep, primal excitement within her. Each wave that crashed against the sea serpent's hull seemed to echo her heartbeat, quickening with anticipation as the island drew ever nearer. Mara's determination was unwavering, and her confidence was palpable. The treasure she sought, along with the power and glory it promised, was within her grasp, and she was prepared to confront any force that dared to impede her progress. Her mind was already racing with strategies and contingencies, ready to outwit and outfight anyone who would challenge her claim. Woe betide any soul who attempted to stand in her way, for Captain Mara Hawke was a force to be reckoned with, a legend in the making, whose path to greatness was forged through unwavering resolve and boundless ambition.
Chapter 2: The Kingdom's Secret. The coastal kingdoms, renowned for their breathtaking beauty, appeared serene and idyllic as the golden light of dusk bathed the landscape in a warm, ethereal glow. The sprawling palaces stood majestic against the backdrop of a tranquil sea, their intricate architecture shimmering in the fading sunlight. Glittering harbors, dotted with lavishly adorned ships, reflected the hues of the setting sun, creating a picture of perfect harmony and prosperity. The scene seemed to embody the pinnacle of elegance and calm, an image of opulence that masked the undercurrents of discontent simmering beneath the surface. Yet beneath this facade of tranquility lay a brewing storm, a tempest of political intrigue that threatened to shatter the illusion of peace. The glittering serenity of the coastal kingdoms belied the undercurrents of treachery and ambition that surged just out of sight. Secret alliances were formed in shadowed rooms, and whispered conspiracies wove through the corridors of power like invisible threads, binding together a web of deceit that could unravel the fragile equilibrium of the region. The air crackled with the tension of unsaid words and hidden agendas, each faction maneuvering for dominance in a dangerous game of political chess. In the grandiose palace of Eldoria, the tension was palpable, thickening the very air within its opulent walls. The palace, with its towering spires and resplendent halls, seemed to breathe with the weight of its own grandeur. Ornate chandeliers cast shifting shadows across marble floors, and the rich scent of blooming flowers from the palace gardens mingled with the scent of intrigue. The corridors, lined with intricate tapestries and gilded sconces, seemed to whisper secrets of plots and betrayals, their hushed murmurs an eerie counterpoint to the external splendor. The king's private chambers were a stark contrast to the opulent festivities of the palace. Here, amidst the scattered maps and documents, King Alastair wrestled with the weight of governance. His face, etched with the strains of leadership, was illuminated by the flickering light of a solitary candle. As he pored over reports of unrest and discontent, his brow furrowed in deep concern. The serenity of the palace's exterior was a cruel veneer, hiding the growing storm of dissent and conspiracy that threatened to breach the palace's sanctum and challenge his rule. Outside the palace, the shimmering facade of the coastal kingdoms seemed to stand as a final, fragile barrier against the chaos brewing within. The calm of the harbors and the grandeur of the palaces were mere distractions from the darker currents at play. As nightfall descended, the calm was deceptive, a prelude to the upheaval that was fast approaching. The future of Eldoria and its neighboring realms hung precariously in the balance, with the storm of political intrigue ready to break, promising to reshape the destinies of all who dwelled within its bounds. In the heart of Eldoria's grand palace, a shadowy figure moved with measured precision, each step deliberate and silent. Cloaked in dark velvet that seemed to absorb the scant light filtering through the narrow, ornate windows, the figure navigated the dimly lit corridors with an almost ghostly grace. The heavy fabric of the cloak shifted like a whisper against the cold, stone walls, blending seamlessly into the shadows. The palace, with its majestic architecture and historical grandeur, appeared more somber and foreboding under the cloak of night, as if it too sensed the brewing tension. The figure halted outside the heavy wooden doors of the royal chambers, their intricate carvings barely discernible in the low light. The doors were a formidable barrier, designed to protect the sanctity of the king's private quarters. The tension was almost palpable as the figure paused, listening intently to the muffled sounds from within. The weight of the cloak seemed to press down with the gravity of the moment, each breath a careful calculation as the figure prepared to breach the inner sanctum of power. Inside, the royal chamber was a realm of stark contrast to the darkened halls. The room was a testament to opulence, with opulent tapestries draped gracefully over the walls, their rich colors and elaborate designs adding to the room's regal atmosphere. Crystal chandeliers, their prisms catching the flickering candlelight, cast a warm, golden glow that danced across the polished marble floors. The light created a shimmering halo around the furniture, highlighting the luxuriousness that defined the king's personal space. At the center of this splendor, King Alastair sat at his imposing mahogany desk, a solitary figure amidst the sea of grandeur. His desk was cluttered with maps and documents, each sheet detailing the myriad affairs of the kingdom. The king's face, etched with lines of fatigue and worry, reflected the immense weight of his responsibilities. His brows were drawn in a deep frown as he pored over reports of unrest and dissent, his grim expression betraying the strain of dealing with threats both within and beyond his realm. The atmosphere in the chamber was heavy with the gravity of the king's concerns. As King Alastair read through the reports, the warm glow of the chandeliers seemed to do little to dispel the encroaching darkness of his thoughts. Each page was a reminder of the instability threatening his reign, and the king's focus was unwavering, his resolve hardened by the knowledge of the challenges ahead. The contrast between the room's opulence and the king's troubled demeanor underscored the fragility of the peace he sought to maintain, making the impending danger even more palpable. Unknown to King Alastair, his most trusted adviser, Lord Gavrick, had been maneuvering with a treacherous purpose hidden beneath a veneer of loyalty. In the dimly lit chamber next door, the atmosphere was thick with secrecy and betrayal. The room was sparsely furnished, its shadows deepened by the flickering light of a single candle, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Lord Gavrick, his face partially obscured by the gloom, moved with a measured calm that belied the gravity of his intentions. His once reassuring presence, now a facade, was carefully dismantled in the privacy of this clandestine meeting. Across from Gavrick, a masked conspirator loomed like a spectre in the darkness, their features hidden behind an intricate mask of black and silver. The conspirator's voice was cold and precise, a stark contrast to the ambient silence of the chamber. As Gavrick spoke in hushed tones, their conversation was a low murmur that cut through the stillness, their words laden with malice and ambition. The flickering candlelight barely illuminated their faces, but the intensity of their exchange was palpable, each word steeped in treachery and unspoken plans. Gavrick's demeanor, once marked by an unshakable loyalty to the king, was now revealed as a carefully crafted illusion. His eyes, previously known for their calm and measured gaze, were now sharp with a ruthless ambition that glinted in the low light. The advisor's polished exterior had concealed his deep-seated desire for power, a hunger that had led him down a dark path of deceit. As he laid out the details of his plan, his voice betrayed none of the internal conflict one might expect from a man poised to betray his sovereign. The plot Gavrick unveiled was audacious in its scope and chilling in its precision. The assassination of King Alastair was not a hasty decision, but a meticulously planned scheme designed to remove the king and seize the throne for himself. The night of the upcoming royal gala was chosen as the perfect stage for this sinister act, a night of revelry and distraction that would provide the ideal cover for their nefarious plans. The details were discussed with a cold efficiency, each element of the plot carefully orchestrated to ensure success. As Gavrick and the masked conspirator exchanged final instructions, the gravity of their scheme became ever clearer. The conspirators' nod of agreement was a chilling affirmation of their commitment to the plan, their eyes glinting with a cold resolve. The room's oppressive darkness seemed to mirror the bleakness of their intentions, a foreboding backdrop to the scheming that was unfolding. The gala, a celebration of grandeur and pomp, was now tainted with the shadow of imminent danger. The night of the royal gala was set to become a turning point in the kingdom's fate, a culmination of deceit and ambition masked by the glittering facade of festivity. As the conspirators prepared to set their plan into motion, the palace was alive with preparations for the grand event. Little did the revelers know that beneath the surface of their celebration, a deadly scheme was in the making, poised to alter the course of Eldoria's history in a single, decisive stroke. As night fell over Eldoria, the palace grounds were transformed into a glittering stage for the elaborate royal gala. The once somber corridors and majestic halls now pulsed with an air of festivity and grandeur. The palace's exterior, bathed in the soft, ambient glow of lanterns and torches, looked enchanting against the night sky. Ornate decorations draped from the ceiling like cascades of stars, and the sounds of music and laughter floated through the crisp night air, masking the darker currents that swirled beneath the surface. Inside the grand ballroom, guests dazzled in shimmering gowns and finely tailored suits, their attire a feast for the eyes amidst the opulent surroundings. The room was a riot of color and light, with crystal chandeliers casting a warm, golden glow over the polished marble floors. Laughter and lively chatter filled the air, a symphony of joy and celebration that seemed to encapsulate the very essence of high society. Yet, amid the splendor, the tension was palpable, a hidden undercurrent that threatened to disrupt the evening's revelry. In a secluded alcove away from the main festivities, Gavrik and his co-conspirators were hard at work, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of a single candle. The alcove was a stark contrast to the grandeur of the ballroom, its walls lined with rich, dark velvet, and its atmosphere thick with secrecy. Gavrik's voice was low and measured as he reviewed their meticulously arranged plans, his fingers tracing the details on a parchment that outlined their sinister plot. Each conspirator moved with precision, their every action a testament to the gravity of their scheme. The conspirators' preparations were meticulous, their focus unwavering as they ensured that every detail of their plan was executed flawlessly. The dark corners of the alcove were filled with the quiet rustling of documents and the soft clinking of concealed weapons, a stark reminder of the imminent threat. Gavrik's demeanor was a study in calculated coldness, his expression a mask of composure that betrayed none of the urgency or anxiety he felt. The room seemed to hold its breath, suspended in the tense silence of their final preparations. Meanwhile, in the heart of the gala, King Alistair moved through the crowd with an air of regal grace, his presence a beacon of authority amidst the throng of well-wishers. His regal bearing, marked by his finely crafted attire and composed demeanor, stood in stark contrast to the darker machinations unfolding just beyond the palace walls. As he mingled with his guests, exchanging pleasantries and smiles, he remained blissfully unaware of the peril that loomed so close. The king's interactions were marked by genuine warmth and charm, his laughter ringing out like a melody that blended seamlessly with the evening's music. Each conversation was a careful dance of diplomacy and grace, a reflection of his dedication to his role as sovereign. Yet, as he engaged with his guests, his mind was focused on the present joys of the gala, oblivious to the shadowy conspiracy that threatened to disrupt the night's harmony. As the evening wore on, the storm of political intrigue grew ever closer, a tempest poised to strike with devastating force. The festive atmosphere of the gala seemed almost surreal against the backdrop of impending danger, a delicate illusion that masked the reality of the threat facing Eldoria. The palace, with its grandeur and splendor, was now a battleground of secrets and ambition, where the fate of the kingdom hung precariously in the balance. The night promised a future that could shift dramatically with a single, decisive act. The contrast between the joyous celebration and the looming threat was stark, a testament to the fragility of peace amidst the turmoil of power. As the gala continued, each moment drew the kingdom closer to the brink of upheaval, with the intricate dance of deception and ambition unfolding against the backdrop of an unforgettable night. Chapter 3: The Mermaid Prince. As the sun dipped below the horizon, its golden rays cast a soft, shimmering light over the vast expanse of the ocean. The fading daylight painted the water's surface with a palette of deep blues and soft oranges, creating a tranquil yet vibrant scene. The serene glow penetrated the depths, gradually giving way to the mysterious darkness of the deep sea. Here, far beneath the surface, the true splendor of the underwater realm began to emerge, revealing a world of breathtaking beauty and otherworldly charm. In this hidden paradise, Prince Kael glided through the coral-studded waters of Atlantia, his movements a graceful ballet against the backdrop of the kingdom's splendor. The prince's sleek, azure tail shimmered as it cut through the water with effortless elegance, each flick reflecting the ambient light in a dance of iridescent hues. The ocean around him was a canvas of vibrant colors, with towering coral reefs forming intricate, labyrinthine structures that seemed to pulse with life. Each coral branch and anemone glowed softly, casting an enchanting glow that illuminated the darkened waters. Atlantia itself was a realm of unparalleled elegance, its beauty rivaled only by the most fantastical dreams. The coral formations reached towards the surface like natural cathedrals, their shapes and colors a testament to the kingdom's natural artistry. Bioluminescent flora dotted the landscape, their delicate light adding an ethereal quality to the surroundings. The plants glowed in shades of violet, turquoise, and emerald, their luminescence creating a mesmerizing tableau of shifting colors that seemed to ebb and flow with the gentle currents. The water around Prince Kael was alive with movement and vibrancy. Schools of fish darted through the coral, their scales catching the light and scattering it in a burst of fleeting brilliance. Sea creatures of all shapes and sizes flitted among the reefs, their graceful motions adding to the kingdom's dynamic beauty. The ambient glow from the bioluminescent flora illuminated their forms in soft, otherworldly hues, making the underwater realm appear as if it were bathed in a dreamlike light. As Kael swam deeper into the heart of Atlantia, the grandeur of his kingdom became even more apparent. The deeper waters revealed vast underwater gardens and hidden grottos adorned with precious pearls and sparkling gemstones. These treasures lay nestled among the coral, their glittering surfaces catching the light and adding a sense of wonder to the already breathtaking scenery. The entire kingdom seemed to be a living masterpiece, its beauty enhanced by the interplay of light and shadow. In this tranquil yet awe-inspiring setting, Prince Kael felt a profound connection to his kingdom. The serenity of the ocean and the majesty of Atlantia's beauty were a constant reminder of the responsibility he carried as its guardian. The underwater realm, with its shifting colors and ethereal light, was a world that demanded both reverence and vigilance. As he swam through its enchanting depths, Kael's resolve to protect and cherish his kingdom was as deep and enduring as the ocean itself. Prince Kael of Atlantia was a vision of striking grace and authority, a majestic figure who seemed to embody the very essence of the ocean. His scales, a deep, lustrous blue, shimmered with an iridescence that captured the shifting light of the underwater realm. Each movement he made was fluid and purposeful, his form cutting through the water with an elegance that spoke of both strength and poise. His presence was commanding, a blend of natural beauty and regal dignity that marked him as a true prince of the sea. Kael's long, flowing tail undulated through the water with an effortless precision, its movements smooth and rhythmic. The tail's surface was adorned with delicate patterns that sparkled and shifted with every flick and sweep, adding to the prince's overall aura of splendor. The graceful undulation of his tail was a testament to his skill and agility, allowing him to navigate the ocean's depths with both ease and authority. Each motion was a carefully choreographed display of his royal heritage, a dance of fluidity and control. As Kael made his way through the grand hallways of the Atlantian palace, his regal bearing was unmistakable. The corridors of the palace were a breathtaking example of oceanic architecture, their design both grand and harmonious with the underwater environment. Tall arches of coral and crystal framed the passageways, their intricate patterns and vibrant colors reflecting the soft, diffused light that filtered through the water. The entire space seemed to glow with an ethereal beauty, a perfect blend of natural splendor and crafted elegance. The palace's walls, constructed from a combination of polished coral and shimmering crystals, created a dazzling interplay of light and shadow. The light that penetrated the water cast a gentle, diffused glow over the corridors, making the surfaces of the palace walls sparkle like a field of stars. The grandeur of the architecture was complemented by the delicate, flowing sea flora that adorned the hallways, their bioluminescent blooms adding a touch of magical illumination to the already stunning environment. Each step Cale took resonated with the authority and grace of his position, the palace's opulent surroundings enhancing his regal presence. The interplay of light on his scales and the reflections off the palace's crystalline structures created a captivating visual display, reinforcing his status as the Mermaid Prince. The beauty of his environment seemed to magnify his own inherent elegance, making him a living embodiment of Atlantea's majesty. In this majestic setting, Prince Cale was not merely a figure of royalty but a symbol of the ocean's grandeur. The palace, with its awe-inspiring design and the seamless integration of natural and artistic elements, provided a fitting backdrop for the prince's dignified presence. As he moved through the hallways, Cale's every gesture was a testament to his noble heritage, his grace and authority blending effortlessly with the splendor of the underwater realm he was destined to protect. Despite the kingdom's serene appearance, a storm of political unrest brewed beneath the surface, its turbulence hidden from the tranquil beauty of Atlantia. The outward calm of the underwater realm belied the simmering tensions that had begun to unsettle the kingdom. The gentle swaying of seaweed and the soft glow of bioluminescent flora were deceptive, masking the currents of unease that stirred beneath the surface. The contrast between the kingdom's outward splendor and the underlying unrest was stark, a reflection of the wider conflicts that had begun to ripple through the coastal regions. The air in Atlantia was thick with a palpable sense of tension, an almost electric charge that seemed to vibrate through the water. The usually harmonious flow of the ocean currents felt disrupted, as if the very fabric of the kingdom's stability was being tested. Whispers of dissent and unease traveled swiftly through the underwater channels, carrying news of unrest and shifting alliances. This growing tension was a manifestation of the larger conflicts that extended beyond Atlantia, threatening to engulf the kingdom in a storm of political strife. King Orin, the wise and venerable ruler of Atlantia, was deeply concerned about the rising instability that loomed over his kingdom. His once steady and assured demeanor was now tinged with worry, as the shadows of discord began to encroach upon the palace's grandeur. The king's chambers, filled with the soft glow of oceanic light and the intricate beauty of his regal surroundings, were now the setting for urgent meetings and troubled discussions. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon him, as he grappled with the challenges threatening the fragile peace of his realm. Prince Cale was acutely aware of the growing threats that loomed over Atlantia. His perceptive nature allowed him to sense the shifting tides of power and the deepening rifts within the kingdom. The unrest was not confined to the surface world alone. It seeped into the depths of his own realm, unsettling the once stable balance of power. Cale's keen instincts and understanding of the underwater politics made him a vital figure in navigating the kingdom through these turbulent waters. The threat was multifaceted, encompassing both external dangers and internal discontent. The delicate balance of power within Atlantia was shifting, a reflection of the broader instability that gripped the coastal regions. The echoes of the turmoil reached even the most secluded corners of the kingdom, where the tranquil beauty of the ocean was now marred by the undercurrents of conflict. The serene gardens and grand hallways of the palace seemed almost out of place against the backdrop of rising unease. The peaceful facade of Atlantia was increasingly at odds with the mounting pressure and a sense of impending upheaval. As the turmoil continued to unfold, the kingdom's once immaculate harmony was increasingly threatened. The shifting balance of power was a constant reminder of the fragility of peace and the challenges facing the Mermaid Prince and his father. The grandeur of Atlantia, with its luminous coral and sparkling crystals, seemed to stand in stark contrast to the growing discord. The kingdom's fate now hinged on the ability of its leaders to confront and overcome the political unrest that threatened to disrupt their way of life. In the royal palace's grand throne room, the ambience was a mesmerizing blend of opulence and aquatic beauty. The walls were draped with shimmering tapestries crafted from seaweed and opal, their surfaces catching the soft, undulating light that filtered through the water. These tapestries swirled with opalescent hues, reflecting shades of turquoise, lavender, and emerald that danced across the room, creating a captivating kaleidoscope of color. The gentle, wavering light added an ethereal quality to the space, enhancing the regal elegance of the throne room while underscoring the gravity of the discussions taking place. Prince Kael stood at the center of the room, his commanding presence a striking contrast to the serene beauty of his surroundings. His regal bearing and keen expression made him the focal point of the gathering. The lines of concern etched on his face spoke volumes, as he listened intently to the reports delivered by his most trusted advisors. Kael's deep, azure scales shimmered under the soft light, their radiant blue reflecting his inner turmoil and determination. His posture, upright and attentive, conveyed his commitment to addressing the critical issues at hand. The advisors, gathered around a grand coral and crystal table, spoke in hushed tones, their voices blending seamlessly with the gentle hum of the ocean currents. Each piece of information shared was a thread in the intricate tapestry of the kingdom's challenges, adding layers of complexity to the situation. Their whispers carried the weight of urgency and concern, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the room's light. The atmosphere was charged with a palpable sense of tension, a stark reminder of the precarious state of Atlantia's peace. The throne room itself seemed almost alive with the tension that filled the space. The soft light refracted through the tapestries created shifting patterns on the walls, as if the room itself were reacting to the gravity of the discussions. The opalescent colors and gentle glow provided a stark contrast to the seriousness of the matters being addressed, highlighting the dissonance between the kingdom's serene exterior and the turmoil within. The grandeur of the room only served to emphasize the enormity of the threats facing Atlantia. As the meeting progressed, the weight of the situation grew heavier with each passing moment. The advisors detailed the unrest and potential threats with meticulous precision, their words painting a troubling picture of the challenges ahead. Kael's eyes remained fixed on them, absorbing every detail and weighing the implications for his kingdom. The seriousness of his expression reflected the gravity of the information being shared, underscoring the urgency of the decisions that lay before him. In this moment of intense deliberation, the beauty of the throne room was both a comfort and a contrast to the dire circumstances. The serene, opalescent light and the grandeur of the palace were reminders of the kingdom's splendor, yet they also highlighted the stark reality of the threats confronting Atlantia. Prince Kael's resolve was unwavering as he faced the daunting task of navigating his kingdom through these turbulent times, fully aware that the fate of Atlantia depended on his leadership and the decisions made within these hallowed walls. As Prince of Atlantia, Kael's role transcended mere royalty. He was both a symbol of hope and a strategic leader, embodying the hopes and dreams of his people. His presence was a beacon in the murky depths of political turmoil, offering a reassuring sense of stability amidst the growing uncertainties. Kael's regal bearing and poised demeanor served to inspire confidence in his subjects, even as he grappled with the weight of his responsibilities. The duality of his role required him to navigate the delicate balance between embodying the kingdom's ideals and executing the complex strategies needed to safeguard it. Kael's mind was a sharp, analytical instrument, constantly engaged in the intricate task of defending Atlantia from an array of encroaching dangers. His thoughts moved with the precision of a master strategist, dissecting every potential threat and formulating plans to counteract them. Whether poring over intelligence reports or considering the implications of shifting alliances, Kael's focus was unwavering. The complexities of his position demanded a constant state of vigilance, as he worked tirelessly to anticipate and neutralize any hazards that might jeopardize his kingdom. The threats facing Atlantia were multifaceted and intricate, adding layers of complexity to Kael's strategic efforts. Political intrigues from the surface world cast long shadows over the underwater realm, with the actions of distant powers influencing the stability of the oceanic kingdom. Meanwhile, shifting alliances among the sea's own factions created a volatile environment where allegiances could change in an instant. Adding to this complexity was the growing unrest within the depths of the ocean itself, where ancient rivalries and emerging factions threatened to disrupt the fragile peace. Cale's resolve was a constant, unwavering force, driven by an unshakable sense of duty to his people. His commitment to protecting Atlantia was not just a matter of duty, but a profound personal conviction. Each challenge he faced was met with a steadfast determination to preserve the kingdom's peace and prosperity. His leadership was guided by a deep-seated belief in the importance of maintaining harmony within his realm, even as external and internal pressures threatened to destabilize it. The prince's dedication to his role was evident in the long hours he spent strategizing and negotiating, often working late into the night as he sought solutions to the kingdom's pressing issues. His leadership was characterized by a blend of intellect and compassion, as he balanced the demands of strategy with the needs of his people. Cale's commitment to his kingdom extended beyond mere duty. It was a reflection of his personal values and his vision for the future of Atlantia. In the face of mounting challenges, Cale remained a steadfast guardian of his realm, his every action driven by a desire to protect and preserve the underwater kingdom he loved. The peace and prosperity of Atlantia rested on his shoulders, and he approached his responsibilities with a resolute heart and a clear mind. As he navigated the turbulent waters of political intrigue and internal unrest, Cale's unwavering dedication served as a beacon of hope for his people, embodying the strength and resilience of Atlantia itself. As the night deepened, Prince Cale sought a brief respite from the weight of his duties, swimming gracefully toward the palace's observation dome. This dome, a marvel of Atlantean architecture, was constructed from a rare, transparent material that glowed softly with its own luminescence. It hovered above the sprawling gardens and grand halls of the palace, offering an unobstructed view of the ocean's vast expanse. The delicate, shimmering structure seemed to float in the water, its smooth curves catching the faintest glimmers of light from the world above. Inside the dome, Cale was greeted by a breathtaking panorama of the starlit ocean. The surface above sparkled with a multitude of stars, their light filtering through the water and casting a tranquil, ethereal glow. The sight was both calming and haunting, a reminder of the delicate beauty that was imperiled by the growing unrest. The stars seemed to dance across the water's surface, their reflection creating a mesmerizing tapestry of light and shadow that enveloped the dome in a serene, yet melancholic ambience. As he floated in the dome, Cale's thoughts drifted toward the surface world. The political unrest that was brewing above threatened to spill over into the oceanic realms, casting a shadow over the peaceful depths of Atlantia. The prince's mind grappled with the implications of these external conflicts, the potential consequences for his kingdom weighing heavily on his shoulders. The serenity of the starlit view was a stark contrast to the turbulence he faced, serving as both a solace and a reminder of the stakes involved. Cale understood that Atlantia's fate was intricately intertwined with the larger conflicts unfolding in the surface world. The political machinations and rising tensions above were not isolated events, they had far-reaching implications for his own realm. As he gazed out at the starry ocean, Cale resolved to navigate these treacherous waters with both wisdom and strength. The challenges he faced were formidable, but he was determined to steer Atlantia through the storm with unwavering resolve. The observation dome offered a rare moment of solitude amidst the chaos, allowing Cale to collect his thoughts and reflect on the gravity of his situation. The gentle currents that flowed around the dome provided a soothing backdrop, their rhythmic motion a reminder of the ever-present, yet fragile, balance of the underwater world. In this tranquil setting, Cale found a brief escape from the demands of leadership, allowing him to gather his thoughts and fortify his resolve. As the night wore on, the prince remained in the dome, his gaze fixed on the starlit ocean. The beauty of the view was a poignant counterpoint to the challenges he faced, reinforcing the importance of his mission. With the weight of Atlantea's future resting on his shoulders, Cale's determination only grew stronger. The serene majesty of the ocean above served as a powerful reminder of what he was striving to protect, and he knew that he must act with both courage and clarity to safeguard the realm he cherished. The serene beauty of Atlantea, with its tranquil underwater vistas and shimmering aquatic splendor, stood in stark contrast to the internal turmoil that plagued Prince Cale. The kingdom's underwater gardens glistened with vibrant hues, and the majestic coral formations created an ethereal, almost otherworldly ambience. Yet, amidst this beauty, Cale felt the weight of leadership pressing heavily upon him. The peaceful allure of his surroundings only served to amplify the gravity of the challenges he faced, a reminder of what was at stake. The vast expanse of the ocean stretched endlessly before him, a sprawling canvas of shimmering blues and greens that seemed to merge seamlessly with the starlit sky above. The soft, undulating light of the underwater realm created an almost hypnotic effect, as if the ocean itself were whispering its secrets to him. Cale's gaze lingered on the horizon, his heart heavy with the burden of knowing that his decisions could tip the scales between preserving peace or plunging Atlantea into chaos. As he stared into the ocean's depths, Cale felt a deep resolve crystallize within him. The challenges facing his kingdom were daunting and multifaceted, a labyrinth of political intrigue, shifting alliances, and rising threats from both above and below. Despite the enormity of the obstacles, Cale was determined to confront them with unwavering commitment. His sense of duty to Atlantea and its people fueled his determination, guiding him through the murky waters of uncertainty and danger. The serenity of Atlantea's underwater landscape was a sharp juxtaposition to the turbulent reality Cale was grappling with. The delicate beauty of the bioluminescent flora and the graceful movements of marine life stood in stark contrast to the dark currents of unrest swirling beneath the surface. The dichotomy of peace and turmoil was a constant reminder of the precarious balance he had to maintain, a balance that was crucial to the kingdom's stability and future. With each passing moment, Cale's resolve grew stronger. The vastness of the ocean, both beautiful and intimidating, served as a backdrop for his determination to protect his kingdom. The weight of leadership was not something he could easily shed, but it was a mantle he wore with a fierce sense of purpose. His commitment to Atlantea was unwavering, driven by a profound sense of responsibility and a desire to safeguard the legacy of his ancestors. As the ocean's serene beauty enveloped him, Cale took solace in the knowledge that his efforts were not in vain. The challenges he faced were immense, but the kingdom he cherished was worth every sacrifice. His determination to preserve the peace and prosperity of Atlantea was fueled by a deep love for his people and a vision for a brighter future. The stakes were high, but Cale was prepared to face whatever came his way. The contrast between the peaceful beauty of his realm and the turbulent political landscape only served to sharpen Cale's focus. The serene underwater world was a constant reminder of what he was fighting to protect. Every coral formation, every beam of bioluminescent light, was a symbol of Atlantea's enduring legacy, and the reason behind his relentless efforts. In this moment of reflection, Cale drew strength from the very beauty that contrasted with his challenges. As the night wore on and the ocean's calm enveloped him, Cale remained steadfast in his resolve. The serene majesty of Atlantea provided a backdrop to his determination, reinforcing his commitment to his kingdom and its future. Guided by his unwavering dedication, Prince Cale was ready to confront the trials ahead, with the knowledge that his actions would shape the destiny of his beloved realm. Chapter 4: The First Encounter. The moon hung high in the night sky, its silvery light casting an ethereal glow over the vast expanse of the ocean. The soft, ghostly illumination danced across the water's surface, transforming the inky darkness into a shimmering tableau of silver and shadow. The sea serpent cut through the waves with a steady, purposeful glide, its black sails unfurling like dark wings against the backdrop of a starlit sky. The vessel's silhouette was a striking contrast to the tranquil night, a harbinger of the tension and excitement that simmered aboard. Captain Mara Hawke moved with a restless energy on the deck, her presence commanding and alert. The search for the fabled treasure had led her crew into these uncharted waters, and Mara's instincts, honed by years of experience, told her that they were nearing their goal. Her sharp eyes scanned the horizon, piercing through the darkness with a mixture of anticipation and determination. Every creak of the ship and whisper of the wind seemed to amplify the sense of impending discovery. The crew, equally charged with excitement, moved with a focused urgency. Their murmured conversations and quick, deliberate actions reflected their shared sense of purpose. Each member was attuned to the delicate balance between hope and apprehension, their eyes darting across the horizon for any sign of the elusive prize. The atmosphere aboard the Sea Serpent was thick with expectancy, a collective breath held as they awaited the moment that could change their fortunes. As the night stretched on, the moon's glow remained a constant companion to the ship's voyage. The ocean, though serene in appearance, held secrets beneath its surface, and the Sea Serpent sailed steadily onward, driven by the promise of discovery. Mara's restless pacing and the crew's heightened vigilance underscored the significance of their quest, setting the stage for an encounter that would alter their journey in ways they could scarcely imagine. Below the surface of the ocean, a different world unfolded, a realm where tranquility masked a brewing storm of tension and unrest. The serene beauty of Atlantia, with its sprawling coral reefs and bioluminescent flora, belied the underlying currents of political discord and unease. The gentle sway of the seaweed and the soft, shimmering light filtering through the water created a deceptive calm, one that contrasted sharply with the turbulence that simmered beneath. Prince Kael navigated the underwater kingdom with a sense of growing apprehension. His sleek, azure form moved with practiced grace through the coral-studded expanse, his every motion fluid and deliberate. The grandeur of Atlantia's architecture loomed around him, its coral towers and crystal spires glowing softly in the dim light. Yet, even amidst this breathtaking beauty, Kael's thoughts were consumed by the reports he had received of surface ships encroaching upon their waters. The presence of these surface vessels was a troubling disruption in an already volatile time. The kingdom, known for its peace and prosperity, was now facing an unprecedented threat. Kael's sharp eyes scanned the darkened depths, alert to every shadow and movement. The recent disturbances were not just a minor inconvenience, they represented a potential upheaval of the delicate balance that maintained Atlantia's stability. As he swam through the vast underwater corridors, Kael could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down upon him. The shifting tides and the occasional flicker of distant light created an eerie atmosphere, amplifying the sense of foreboding that accompanied his every thought. The reports of surface ships had stirred fears of aggression and invasion, adding to the already complex web of political intrigue and unrest. The ocean currents carried more than just whispers of the sea. They bore tidings of discord and anxiety from every corner of the kingdom. The normally serene surroundings were charged with an undercurrent of worry, a reflection of the mounting pressure on Kael and his advisors. The tranquil expanse of coral and seaweed, once a symbol of peace, now felt like a fragile veneer concealing the storm beneath. Kael's keen senses were attuned to the subtleties of his environment. Every shift in the water, every sudden burst of movement, was scrutinized with the intensity of a leader who understood the gravity of the situation. His resolve to protect Atlantia was unwavering, yet the unknowns that lay ahead added layers of complexity to his already challenging role. The underwater kingdom was vast, its expanse seemingly infinite, yet it felt increasingly claustrophobic to Cale. The beauty of the environment, with its vibrant colors and intricate patterns, contrasted sharply with the darkening shadows of impending conflict. Each passing moment heightened the urgency of the situation, making the weight of his duties even more palpable. As he continued his patrol, Cale's mind raced with possible scenarios and strategies. The encroaching surface ships were a tangible threat, but they were also a symptom of a larger, more insidious problem. The political machinations at play were complex, and the potential for conflict loomed large on the horizon. In the depths of Atlantia, amidst the shifting sands of uncertainty and unrest, Prince Cale remained resolute. His commitment to his people and his kingdom was unwavering, even as the tranquil beauty of his surroundings seemed to mock the gravity of the situation. The challenges ahead were daunting, but Cale was prepared to confront them with the strength and wisdom that defined his leadership. The collision of two worlds, surface and underwater, occurred with startling abruptness when Mara's ship, the Sea Serpent, strayed into a forbidden zone of Atlantean waters. The vessel, large and dark against the backdrop of the starlit sea, unknowingly encroached on territory guarded fiercely by the kingdom of Atlantia. The moonlight, casting its silvery glow across the ocean, illuminated the ship's progress as it drifted perilously close to a hidden reef, an uncharted danger lurking just beneath the surface. As the Sea Serpent neared the reef, the serene surface of the water belied the turmoil brewing below. Cale's patrol, ever vigilant and alert, detected the intrusion with practiced precision. The Mermaid Prince, guided by his deep-seated responsibility and sharp instincts, led his elite squadron through the darkened depths. The sudden emergence of Cale and his guards, gliding through the water with an air of authority, was both unexpected and jarring for the crew of the surface vessel. The sight of Cale's imposing form and his elite guards was a stark contrast to the tranquil beauty of the underwater realm. His scales, shimmering with an ominous glow under the moonlight, created a striking and formidable presence. The Mermaid Prince's every movement was deliberate and commanding, his expression a blend of authority and stern resolve as he signaled his guards to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. The guards, trained for such encounters, responded with swift and practiced efficiency, their readiness evident in their disciplined formation. The juxtaposition of Mara's ship, a symbol of human ambition and adventure, against Cale's royal entourage, a manifestation of ancient aquatic authority, highlighted the clash between the two worlds. The Sea Serpent's dark, imposing silhouette was dwarfed by the ethereal, majestic figures of the mermaids, whose bioluminescent scales and graceful movements underscored their otherworldly nature. The tension between these two forces was palpable, setting the stage for an encounter fraught with significance and potential conflict. As Cale's patrol surrounded the Sea Serpent, the waters around them seemed to hold their breath. The interplay of light and shadow created an almost surreal tableau, where the glittering surface of the ocean and the darkened depths met in a dramatic clash. The Mermaid Prince's commanding presence was a clear signal of the seriousness of the situation, his intent to protect Atlantia's boundaries unwavering despite the encroaching human vessel. In the midst of this charged moment, the boundary between surface and underwater, human and mermaid, became a focal point of tension and intrigue. The encounter was not merely a confrontation of territories but a prelude to an unfolding drama where the fate of both worlds hung in the balance. As the Sea Serpent drifted into the realm of the mermaids, the stage was set for an interaction that would test both sides' resolve and shape the course of their intertwined destinies. The tension in the water was palpable as Cale approached the surface ship, each movement deliberate and infused with a sense of command. His eyes, sharp and calculating, narrowed with suspicion as he closed the distance between his patrol and the Sea Serpent. The moonlight cast a silvery sheen on his scales, accentuating the gravity of his presence. The underwater world seemed to hold its breath, the quiet hum of the ocean echoing the strained anticipation of the encounter. On deck, Mara felt the sudden shift in the ship's motion and the charged atmosphere of urgency that had enveloped the sea serpent. Emerging from the shadows, her keen gaze met the stern eyes of the mermaid prince, their initial exchange crackling with immediate hostility. The moonlit night amplified the stark contrast between them, Mara's fierce, defiant stance and Cale's regal, unyielding demeanor. Her hand instinctively rested on the hilt of her sword, a silent promise of readiness to defend her vessel against any threat. Cale's approach was marked by an unwavering resolve. His posture, straight and commanding, conveyed both authority and a deep concern for the security of Atlantia. His expression, a complex blend of indignation and duty, reflected his disapproval of the intrusion and the potential danger it posed to his kingdom. The surface ship, with its dark sails and imposing silhouette, loomed large against the ethereal beauty of the underwater realm, making the confrontation even more striking. As Mara and Cale faced each other, the clash of their wills was palpable. Mara's defiance was evident in her stance and readiness to act, while Cale's resolute authority and protective instincts shaped his response. The air crackled with a mixture of anger and apprehension, setting the stage for a tense dialogue that would determine the nature of their uneasy alliance. The encounter was more than a simple confrontation. It was a collision of two worlds, each with its own demands and expectations. "State your intentions," Cale demanded, his voice carrying a sharp edge through the ocean's cool depths. "This is forbidden territory. You have no right to be here." His tone left no room for misunderstanding, and the weight of his authority was clear in his commanding presence. The mermaid prince's formidable appearance and the readiness of his guards made it evident that they were prepared to take decisive action if necessary. Mara's response was equally firm, though laced with a hint of curiosity beneath her defiant exterior. "We're in search of treasure, not intending to cause trouble. If we've crossed into your territory, it was not by design." Her gaze held Cale's with an intensity that spoke of both determination and an unspoken challenge. The tension between them was electric, each assessing the other with a mix of wariness and intrigue. As the conversation unfolded, the atmosphere was thick with a mixture of tension and reluctant curiosity. Mara and Cale, each driven by their distinct agendas, found themselves engaging in a dialogue that was as charged as it was revealing. Mara's voice, steady and assertive, contrasted sharply with Cale's measured, authoritative tone. The exchange of words was a dance of diplomacy and defiance, highlighting their immediate conflict while subtly uncovering the layers of their respective motivations. Despite the underlying friction, a glimmer of mutual recognition emerged as the conversation progressed. Both Mara and Cale were acutely aware of the high stakes involved in their encounter. Mara's quest for the treasure, cloaked in the promise of power and fortune, was viewed by Cale not merely as a potential threat but as a critical piece in the broader tapestry of the kingdom's ongoing strife. The realization that their goals, though seemingly opposed, intersected in significant ways began to take shape in their dialogue. Cale's interest in the treasure was not driven solely by personal gain but by the larger implications it held for Atlantia. The mermaid prince saw the treasure as a potential catalyst for conflict or resolution, depending on how it was handled. The treasure's significance extended beyond its material value, intertwining with the realm's political instability and the broader struggle for power that was unfolding both above and below the surface. The night's events laid the groundwork for what promised to be a complex and multifaceted relationship between Mara and Cale. The initial encounter, while fraught with hostility, also hinted at the possibility of an uneasy alliance. As they navigated their confrontation, the potential for cooperation emerged alongside their conflict. The prospect of joining forces, despite their differences, began to take shape as a necessary consideration in their shared pursuit of their respective goals. The tension between them was tempered by a growing awareness of their intertwined fates. The dangerous waters they faced were not just a physical challenge, but a metaphor for the delicate balance they would need to maintain. The conversation set the stage for a relationship characterized by both conflict and collaboration, where trust and suspicion would coexist as they charted a course through the treacherous waters ahead. The moon maintained its silent vigil over the ocean as Mara and Kale's tense first encounter came to an uneasy end. The night sky, illuminated by the moon's pale light, cast a ghostly glow over the scene, highlighting the contrast between the dark, foreboding figure of Kale and the determined stance of Mara. With the immediate confrontation defused, Kale signaled his guards to withdraw, his departure marked by the graceful, purposeful movements of the Mermaid Prince and his elite squadron retreating into the depths. As the prince and his guards disappeared into the shadowy waters, Mara and her crew were left on deck, their faces etched with a mix of confusion and contemplation. The crew's murmured speculations filled the air, punctuated by the soft creaking of the ship as it continued its course. The unexpected intrusion had left a palpable tension among them, an unspoken acknowledgement that the night's events had set the stage for a complex and fraught alliance. The sea serpent glided through the inky darkness, its black sails billowing against the backdrop of the star-strewn sky. The shadows of Mara's encounter with Kale loomed over the ship, casting an enigmatic and uneasy mood over the crew. The lingering effects of the meeting were felt in the somber, reflective silence that followed, each member of the crew pondering the implications of the prince's intrusion and what it meant for their quest. As the ship sailed deeper into the night, the prelude to an intricate dance of politics and ambition began to unfold. The delicate balance of cooperation and conflict that lay ahead was foreshadowed by their first encounter. The horizon held the promise of future confrontations and alliances, with the moonlight serving as a silent witness to the challenges and intrigues that would define their journey. Chapter 5: A Dark Prophecy. The moon hung high and luminous in the night sky, its silvery light casting an otherworldly glow over the sprawling kingdoms of Atlantia and Eldoria. The ocean's surface shimmered with the moon's reflection, while the palace towers and coral spires below were bathed in a soft, ethereal luminescence. The peaceful facade of the night belied the storm brewing beneath, as fate prepared to intervene in ways none could yet foresee. The tranquil night air, filled with the distant sounds of waves and the occasional call of nocturnal creatures, seemed to hold its breath. In the heart of Atlantia, the underwater kingdom thrummed with its usual nocturnal rhythms, while above, Eldoria's grand palace remained a bastion of stately silence. Yet beneath this veneer of calm, the threads of destiny were converging, weaving a complex tapestry of ambition, betrayal, and prophecy. As the moonlight illuminated both realms, it also cast long, foreboding shadows that hinted at the upheaval to come. The prophecy, a dark harbinger of what was to unfold, began to take shape in the secretive chambers of both kingdoms. The peaceful beauty of the night was a stark contrast to the turmoil that would soon erupt, as the forces of fate and ambition prepared to clash. The prophecy would intertwine the destinies of Atlantia and Eldoria in ways that neither kingdom could yet comprehend. The moon's light, a silent witness to the unfolding drama, seemed to foreshadow the coming convergence of their fates. As the night wore on, the celestial glow became a symbol of the impending crisis, casting an eerie calm over the kingdoms. Unseen by the rulers and their subjects, the threads of fate were tightening, drawing Atlantia and Eldoria into a shared struggle. The moon's silver light, once a symbol of tranquility, now held an ominous significance, reflecting the dark omens that would soon reshape the course of their history. The peaceful night was but a fleeting moment before the storm of prophecy would change everything. In the grand, echoing halls of Eldoria's palace, the air was heavy with the weight of history and governance. King Alistair, ensconced behind a richly carved wooden desk, was surrounded by a labyrinth of maps and documents. The papers, detailed with intricate charts and annotations, sprawled across the desk in a testament to the kingdom's complex affairs. Candlelight flickered across the polished marble floors, casting dancing shadows that mirrored the seriousness of the king's deliberations. The solemn silence of the chamber, usually a sanctuary of contemplative solitude, was abruptly shattered by the arrival of an unexpected visitor. The heavy wooden doors to the throne room creaked open, revealing a robed seer who moved with an air of otherworldly grace. The figure's cloak, a deep, flowing fabric that shimmered faintly in the dim light, seemed to merge with the darkness of the corridor, creating an almost spectral presence that immediately drew the attention of everyone in the room. The seer's eyes, visible through the hood of their cloak, were pools of ancient wisdom and enigmatic depth. They carried a gaze that seemed to pierce through the veils of time, searching the very soul of those they encountered. As the royal guards ushered the seer into the throne room with a mix of reverence and caution, the atmosphere thickened with a palpable sense of anticipation and unease. The usual calm of the palace was replaced by an electric tension, as if the very walls were bracing themselves for the weight of the seer's message. King Alistair looked up from his desk, his usually stern face etched with curiosity and concern. The seer's sudden and unannounced appearance was an anomaly that disrupted the orderly flow of the royal court. His eyes, sharp and alert, scrutinized the figure before him, trying to discern the nature of this intrusion and what it might portend for his kingdom. The flickering candlelight reflected off the king's polished armor, casting an almost ghostly glow on his face. As the seer approached the king's throne, the room fell into a hushed silence, the only sound the soft rustling of the seer's robes and the distant murmur of the palace. The tension was palpable, with each member of the court sensing the gravity of the moment. The usual courtly decorum was overshadowed by the weight of impending revelations, as the seer's presence promised a shift in the kingdom's fate. King Alistair gestured for the seer to approach, his hand moving with deliberate calm despite the turmoil within. The seer's entrance was a prelude to a message that would undoubtedly alter the course of Eldoria's future. The king's eyes were fixed on the robed figure, bracing himself for the impact of whatever prophecy or warning the seer might deliver. The anticipation in the room was a living thing, pressing in on the assembled court. The seer finally reached the center of the throne room, where the atmosphere was charged with expectation. The figure's presence, both commanding and ethereal, seemed to draw the very light of the room toward them, casting a spotlight on the king's grim expression. The room's grandeur, with its high ceilings and elaborate tapestries, felt suddenly small and inadequate in the face of the seer's portentous arrival. As the seer prepared to speak, the candle flames flickered more intensely, casting elongated shadows that danced across the walls. The room was a study in contrasts, the opulence of the palace juxtaposed with the weighty, foreboding air brought by the mysterious visitor. The grandeur of Eldoria's throne room seemed to shrink under the seer's inscrutable gaze, setting the stage for a revelation that would ripple through the corridors of power and beyond. The seer's voice, ancient and haunting, broke the heavy silence of the throne room, sending a shiver through the gathered assembly. Each word seemed to reverberate through the air, carrying with it an echo of something profoundly otherworldly. In the shadow of the moon's light, the seer began, their voice imbued with a chilling resonance. When the kingdom's fates are entwined, a betrayal will unfold. The words carried a foreboding weight, their solemnity amplifying the tension that already crackled in the room. King Alastair's eyes widened with a mix of alarm and curiosity as the prophecy took shape. The seer's presence and their cryptic message seemed to cast a spell over the room, drawing every gaze towards them. The grandeur of the throne room, with its high ceilings and elaborate tapestries, appeared to fade into insignificance against the gravity of the prophecy. The light from the flickering candles cast eerie shadows that danced across the walls, making the words seem even more surreal and disquieting. The seer continued, their tone unwavering despite the palpable unease. The blood spilled in the name of power, they intoned, will awaken the ancient wrath. The prophecy hinted at a betrayal deeply rooted in ambition and conflict, a promise of upheaval and retribution. Each phrase was like a dark omen, weaving a tapestry of impending doom that seemed to close in around the king and his court. The chilling words wrapped around the room like a shroud, intensifying the sense of dread. As the seer spoke, the atmosphere in the room grew colder, as if the very air had been touched by the darkness of the prophecy. A storm shall rise from the depths and the surface alike, the seer's voice continued, bringing ruin and redemption in its wake. The imagery of a storm, both oceanic and terrestrial, evoked a sense of inevitable upheaval, a convergence of forces that would shatter the fragile peace of the kingdoms. The king's knuckles whitened as he gripped the arms of his throne, his face a mask of grim determination. The seer's gaze swept over the court, their eyes revealing nothing of the secrets they held. The words lingered, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch from the flickering candlelight. The assembled courtiers exchanged anxious glances, their earlier poise giving way to unease. The grandeur of the throne room seemed to shrink under the weight of the prophecy, the opulence of the surroundings now a stark contrast to the dark foreboding of the seer's message. King Alastair, though visibly shaken, maintained a stern composure. He met the seer's gaze with a steely resolve, understanding that the prophecy was not just a warning but a challenge. "What must be done to avert this storm?" he asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. The question hung in the air, seeking guidance from the enigmatic seer who had delivered such a chilling vision of the future. The seer remained silent for a moment, allowing their words to fully permeate the atmosphere before responding. The silence that followed was thick with anticipation and the haunting sense of inevitability. The flickering candlelight cast long, restless shadows, as if the very walls of the throne room were echoing the prophecy's dark promise. The night had taken on a new and ominous significance, marking the beginning of a turbulent chapter in the history of both kingdoms. As the seer departed, their departure seemed to draw the shadows of the throne room closer, leaving behind an unsettling aura of foreboding. The flickering candlelight cast eerie, wavering shadows on the opulent walls, amplifying the sense of dread that hung in the air. The grandeur of the palace, with its rich tapestries and polished marble floors, felt suddenly diminished in the wake of the prophecy, as if the very essence of the room had been tainted by the dark omens revealed. King Alastair stood alone in the throne room, the seer's words echoing in his mind like a chilling refrain. The prophecy had cast a long shadow over what had once been a straightforward threat. The assassination plot, which had originally seemed like a direct and isolated challenge to his reign, now appeared to be part of a much larger and more perilous scheme. The realization that Atlanteus' fate was intricately linked with his own added layers of complexity and danger to the situation. The king's brow furrowed deeply as he contemplated the implications of the prophecy. Each detail of the seer's message seemed to unravel a new thread of potential disaster, weaving a tapestry of imminent chaos. The weight of impending disaster pressed heavily upon him, each breath he took feeling laden with the gravity of the forewarning. The once clear path of his rule now seemed obscured by the looming threat of a storm that spanned both surface and sea. In the dim light of the throne room, King Alistair's mind raced with strategies and possibilities. The threat was no longer confined to the confines of his own kingdom, but extended into the deep waters of Atlantia, suggesting a convergence of political and mystical forces. His thoughts swirled with the urgent need to devise a plan that would not only protect his realm but also address the broader implications of the prophecy. The sense of urgency grew with each passing moment, as he sought to navigate the treacherous waters of both intrigue and prophecy. The king's face, normally a picture of regal composure, was now etched with lines of concern and determination. The prophecy's dark promise had cast a pall over his thoughts, making it clear that the road ahead would be fraught with peril. As the room remained steeped in silence, punctuated only by the distant hum of palace activity, King Alistair prepared himself for the daunting task of confronting the forces that threatened not just his kingdom, but the stability of both realms. In the heart of Atlantia's underwater palace, the ambience was a stark contrast to the grim reality unfolding above. The Oracle, a revered figure draped in flowing robes of shimmering sea silk, stood in the center of the luminescent chamber. The walls of the chamber glowed softly with the light of bioluminescent flora, casting an otherworldly illumination that danced across the corals and crystal formations. This ethereal setting seemed almost to amplify the gravity of the oracle's words, adding a haunting beauty to the chilling message about to be delivered. As the oracle began to speak, their voice resonated with a profound depth that seemed to ripple through the water itself. "The tides of fate will clash with the fury of betrayal," the oracle intoned, their tone laden with ancient wisdom and foreboding. The words seemed to swirl around Prince Kael, whose sleek form was a sharp contrast against the glowing backdrop. The prophecy's ominous tone was underscored by the flickering lights, which cast shifting shadows that seemed to whisper of impending doom. Prince Kael listened intently, his eyes narrowing as he absorbed the gravity of the oracle's message. As the surface and the depths converge, the oracle continued, "Darkness will rise." The prophecy painted a picture of an inevitable clash between realms, a convergence fraught with peril. Kael's sharp gaze reflected the seriousness of the prophecy, his regal demeanor a mask for the intense concern brewing beneath. The notion of darkness rising in the wake of this convergence was particularly unsettling, suggesting a threat that reached beyond the immediate scope of their underwater kingdom. The oracle's final words hung in the water like a shroud. "Beware the shadows, for they will reveal the path to salvation or destruction." The chamber's soft, bioluminescent glow seemed to dim slightly, casting deeper, more menacing shadows as if in response to the prophecy. The duality of salvation and destruction, presented as two potential outcomes, added a layer of complexity to the already unsettling revelation. Kael's mind raced as he processed the oracle's words, the weight of responsibility and impending danger settling heavily on his shoulders. In the stillness that followed the oracle's departure, the chamber seemed to pulse with the resonance of the prophecy. Kael remained motionless for a moment, the intricate patterns of bioluminescent light reflecting the turmoil within him. The revelation that the surface world and the underwater kingdom were bound by a shared fate brought a new dimension to the political strife he faced. The dark shadows and the promise of a rising storm now loomed over both realms, marking the beginning of a perilous journey that would test his resolve and leadership. The prophecy left Kael deeply unsettled, his normally composed demeanor showing cracks as he absorbed the weight of the oracle's dire predictions. The serene beauty of Atlantia's palace, with its shimmering coral walls and soft, bioluminescent glow, now felt starkly incongruent with the gravity of the words he had just heard. The once peaceful ambience of the underwater realm seemed to waver, as if the very essence of the palace was reflecting the turmoil within the prince's heart. Cale's mind raced with the implications of the prophecy, each word unraveling a thread of anxiety and concern. The phrase, "The tides of fate will clash with the fury of betrayal," echoed relentlessly in his thoughts, conjuring images of chaos and upheaval. The peaceful rhythm of the ocean, normally a source of calm and reassurance, now seemed to thrum with a sense of impending doom. The grandeur of the palace, adorned with intricate patterns of bioluminescence and flowing sea silk, felt oddly oppressive under the shadow of the oracle's message. The prince moved through the palace's grand hallways with a sense of urgency, the usual grace of his movements now marred by a tense determination. Every corner of the palace, from the majestic coral arches to the serene gardens illuminated by soft, glowing orbs, seemed to echo with the prophecy's implications. Cale's sharp eyes scanned his surroundings with a newfound intensity, his mind grappling with the reality that the kingdom's tranquility was now threatened by forces beyond its control. As he reached the central chamber, where Atlantea's most important decisions were made, Cale could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The chamber, once a symbol of stability and governance, now felt like a crucible where the future of his realm would be forged. The intricate patterns of light and shadow cast by the bioluminescent flora seemed to dance ominously, mirroring the prince's inner turmoil. The prophecy had transformed what was once a peaceful realm into a stage set for conflict and strife. The realization that the fate of Atlantia was intertwined with the surface world brought a new dimension to the challenges Cale faced. The prophecy's promise of both destruction and redemption created a complex web of possibilities, each more daunting than the last. The tranquil waters of the kingdom now felt charged with a sense of urgency, as if the very currents were reflecting the prince's anxious thoughts. Cale knew that the time for mere vigilance had passed. Decisive action was needed to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. In the dim light of the central chamber, Cale's thoughts turned to the surface world, where the political tensions and unrest were poised to intersect with his own realm. The idea that the destiny of Atlantia was now bound to the unfolding events above was a sobering realization. The once clear boundaries between the surface and the depths had become blurred, and the intricate balance of power was at risk of tipping into chaos. Cale's resolve hardened as he contemplated the path that lay ahead, one fraught with uncertainty and peril. The weight of the prophecy was a constant presence, a reminder that the fate of both his kingdom and the surface world was at stake. Cale's mind was a whirl of strategies and scenarios, each one more complex than the last. The need to protect Atlantia while addressing the broader implications of the prophecy became the central focus of his thoughts. The challenge was not just to safeguard his realm but to navigate the intersecting currents of fate that threatened to engulf them all. As the night deepened, Cale remained in the central chamber, his thoughts a tumult of urgency and determination. The palace, usually a haven of peace and beauty, now felt like a fortress under siege. The serene beauty of Atlantia's palace seemed to be in stark contrast to the turmoil within Cale's heart, reflecting the chasm between the kingdom's tranquil past and its uncertain future. The prince's resolve was unwavering, even as the darkness of the prophecy loomed large over his thoughts. With the prophecy's ominous promise hanging heavily in the air, Cale knew that he faced a pivotal moment in his leadership. The path ahead would require not only courage and wisdom but also a deep understanding of the forces at play. The intricate dance of politics, prophecy, and ambition had begun, and the fate of Atlantia, and its tenuous relationship with the surface world, now rested on his shoulders. As the prophecy's ominous words settled over both kingdoms, Eldoria and Atlantia found themselves on the brink of an unprecedented crisis. King Alastair of Eldoria, with his kingdom's serene beauty now tinged with apprehension, wrestled with the realization that the prophecy's dark foretellings extended far beyond his immediate threat. The once vibrant court of Eldoria, with its opulent halls and glittering festivities, now felt overshadowed by the foreboding message, its grandeur diminished under the weight of impending doom. In Atlantia, the atmosphere was equally charged with tension. Prince Kael's kingdom, with its shimmering underwater palaces and tranquil coral gardens, faced a profound shift as the prophecy's impact rippled through its depths. The usually calming flow of the ocean seemed to echo the gravity of the words spoken by the oracle, casting a veil of unease over the majestic underwater realm. The prophecy had transformed Atlantia's serene beauty into a stage for an unfolding drama that demanded immediate and decisive action. The intertwining fates of Eldoria and Atlantia created a complex web of alliances and conflicts, setting the scene for a confrontation that would test the resolve of both realms. The political landscape, previously marked by a delicate balance of power, now teetered on the edge of upheaval. The once clear boundaries between the surface and underwater worlds began to blur, as the prophecy's dark promise threatened to unravel the fragile peace that had long existed between the two kingdoms. As the two kings grappled with the gravity of their respective situations, the stage was set for a dramatic clash of ambitions and destinies. The looming shadows of the prophecy cast an ominous pall over their political machinations, signaling that the unfolding events would challenge both their leadership and their alliances. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and the resolve of Eldoria and Atlantia would be tested in ways they had never anticipated, as the intertwined fates of their realms began to shape the course of their shared history. Chapter 6: An Unlikely Alliance. The moon hung like a silent sentinel over the ocean, its light casting a silvery sheen across the dark waters. The sea serpent sliced through the gentle swells with a steady grace, its black sails fluttering softly in the night breeze. Captain Mara Hawke stood at the ship's helm, her silhouette outlined against the glowing orb above. The soft lapping of the waves and the distant cries of nocturnal seabirds were the only sounds that broke the silence, creating a serene but tension-filled atmosphere. Mara's sharp eyes were fixed on the horizon, but her thoughts were far from the sea's tranquility. The uneasy truce with Prince Kael, forged under the weight of a shared prophecy, occupied her mind. The encounter with the mermaid prince had been unexpected and fraught with animosity, leaving a lingering friction that neither had fully addressed. The prophecy had bound their fates together, but Mara struggled to reconcile her own goals with the necessity of this reluctant alliance. As the sea serpent continued its course through the moonlit waters, Mara's thoughts churned like the undercurrents beneath. The prophecy spoke of a betrayal and a storm of ruin and redemption, and its implications were far-reaching. She knew that their fates were now intertwined with the dangers lurking in the shadows, but the complexity of their situation left her feeling both apprehensive and resolute. The ocean stretched out endlessly before her, its dark expanse mirroring the uncertainty that lay ahead. The serene beauty of the night was in stark contrast to the turbulent emotions within Mara. She was a pirate accustomed to navigating treacherous waters, but the stakes of this venture were higher than any she had faced before. The looming threat of the assassination plot, combined with the prophecy's ominous forecast, created a sense of urgency that weighed heavily on her. Mara's gaze flickered toward the distant silhouette of the Mermaid Prince's palace, barely visible through the veil of night. She was aware of the delicate balance she had to maintain, not just with Cale but also within her own crew. The alliance with the prince was essential, but it was also a precarious arrangement that required careful navigation. The complexity of their partnership added a layer of intrigue to an already challenging mission. The night wore on, and the soft glow of the moonlight provided little comfort against the pressing reality of their situation. Mara knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she was determined to see their mission through. The prophecy had set their course, and despite the personal and political conflicts that remained unresolved, Mara was resolute in her commitment to prevent the impending disaster. As the sea serpent sailed on, Mara's thoughts were a swirl of strategy and apprehension. The uneasy truce with Cale was now an inescapable part of their journey, and the weight of their shared fate pressed heavily upon her. With each passing moment, the urgency of their mission grew, and Mara knew that only by facing the storm together could they hope to safeguard their realms and fulfill the prophecy's promise of both ruin and redemption. Below the surface, in the depths of Atlantea's underwater palace, Prince Cale swam through the grand corridors with an air of grim determination. The shimmering walls of coral and crystal seemed to reflect the tension that had settled over the kingdom. Each stroke of Cale's powerful tail cut through the water with purpose, the soft glow of bioluminescent flora casting eerie shadows that danced along the ornate arches and columns. The once serene palace now felt oppressive, burdened by the weight of the prophecy's ominous promise. The prophecy's chilling message had stirred unrest among his people, amplifying the unease that had begun to simmer beneath Atlantea's tranquil surface. The seer's cryptic words had left an indelible mark on the prince's mind, making it clear that the threat extended far beyond a mere political assassination. The intertwined fates of Eldoria and Atlantia were now at the forefront of Cale's concerns, with the looming disaster threatening to unravel the very fabric of their existence. As Cale approached the royal meeting chamber, his thoughts were a storm of urgency and resolve. He had been preparing for this encounter with Captain Mara Hawke, knowing that their previous hostility would need to be set aside. The gravity of the situation demanded an alliance forged in necessity rather than choice, and Cale was determined to put aside past grievances to focus on the pressing danger that loomed over both realms. The grandeur of the meeting chamber, adorned with the opulent splendor of Atlantean artistry, seemed almost to mock the dire circumstances. The intricate mosaics and shimmering tapestries that usually inspired awe now felt like a backdrop to the impending crisis. Cale's mind was fixed on the need to act swiftly and decisively. He knew that their next steps would be crucial in preventing the assassination plot from coming to fruition. As he prepared for Mara's arrival, Cale's resolve hardened. He was keenly aware that the pirate captain, whom he had once viewed as a threat, was now an essential ally in their quest to thwart the disaster. The upcoming meeting would test their ability to collaborate despite their differences, and Cale was determined to approach it with the strategic acumen and composure that the situation demanded. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly as Cale moved with a sense of urgency, the soft hum of the ocean currents echoing through the palace. Each turn and passageway seemed to hold a growing sense of anticipation, underscoring the importance of the meeting that was about to take place. The weight of their shared destiny pressed heavily upon him, making every moment of preparation feel like a crucial step toward averting the impending catastrophe. With every passing second, Cale's anticipation grew, and the echoes of the prophecy reverberated in his mind. The alliance with Mara was no longer a matter of personal preference, but a necessity dictated by the fate of both kingdoms. The enormity of their task ahead was matched only by the urgency with which they needed to act. As the moment of their meeting approached, Chaol steeled himself for the confrontation. The intricate beauty of Atlanteus' palace was a stark contrast to the gravity of their situation, and he knew that only by facing the impending threat together could they hope to safeguard their realms. The time for division was over. Now, it was time for an alliance forged in the crucible of their shared struggle. Mara and Chaol's first encounter had been fraught with tension, each viewing the other with suspicion and hostility. Their initial meeting was marked by sharp words and defensive stances, a reflection of the deep-seated distrust between them. Now, however, their circumstances had shifted dramatically. As the threat of a shared disaster loomed, the need for collaboration forced them to confront their differences. The animosity that had colored their interactions would have to be set aside for the greater good. The sea serpent glided silently through the moonlit waters, its dark hull and billowing sails casting stark silhouettes against the glimmering surface. The ship approached a secluded cove near Atlanteus' borders, a quiet haven away from prying eyes. As the vessel anchored, Mara and her crew prepared for the arrival of their uneasy ally. The air was charged with a palpable sense of anticipation, a blend of nervous energy and reluctant hope that filled the atmosphere. On the rocky shoreline, Mara paced with a mixture of impatience and determination. Her usual confident demeanor was tempered by the gravity of the situation. She knew that this meeting with Chaol was critical, not only for their personal alliances but for the survival of both their realms. Her crew, equally tense, moved with a subdued urgency, their eyes scanning the horizon for the first sign of the Mermaid Prince. From the depths of the ocean, Chaol emerged with an air of regal composure. His scales, a shimmering blend of deep blues and silvers, caught the moonlight and reflected it in a mesmerizing display. Flanked by his elite guards, whose presence added to the formality of the occasion, Chaol approached the cove with a commanding grace. The contrast between his elegant underwater attire and the rugged terrain of the cove highlighted the unusual nature of their alliance. As Chaol stepped onto the rocky shore, the tension between him and Mara was almost tangible. Their eyes met across the divide of their respective worlds, a silent acknowledgment of the complexity of their situation. The Mermaid Prince's expression was a mixture of guarded professionalism and reluctant acceptance, while Mara's gaze was firm, her resolve evident despite the underlying uncertainty. The meeting ground, illuminated by the soft glow of the moon and the distant flicker of lanterns on the sea serpent, was an odd blend of natural beauty and nautical ruggedness. The sea's gentle lapping against the shore provided a rhythmic backdrop to the momentous occasion. As Mara and Chaol prepared to address each other, the quiet murmur of the ocean seemed to underscore the significance of their collaboration. With a deep breath, Mara stepped forward to greet Chaol, her voice steady but laced with the weight of their shared responsibility. "Prince Chaol," she began, extending a hand in a gesture of tentative diplomacy. "Thank you for coming." Chaol responded with a nod, his own tone measured and formal. "Captain Mara," he replied, his voice carrying the gravity of the situation. "We have much to discuss." The air between them was thick with unspoken challenges, but the necessity of their alliance was clear. As they moved to a more private area of the cove to continue their discussion, the shadows of the past lingered, but both Mara and Chaol understood that their immediate focus had to be on preventing the looming disaster. The night's events marked the beginning of a complex partnership, forged in the crucible of their shared crisis. Mara approached with a blend of wariness and determination, her posture taut with the readiness of a seasoned warrior. The dim moonlight cast a silvery glow over the secluded cove, highlighting her figure as she stood on the dock. Her hand rested casually on the hilt of her sword, a subtle but clear reminder of her readiness for any potential conflict. As she watched Cale emerge from the water, the prince's sleek, shimmering form cut through the darkness with an ethereal grace. Cale glided up to the dock with a regal composure, his scales reflecting the moonlight in a mesmerizing display of deep blues and silvers. The contrast between his elegant underwater presence and the rugged, moonlit shore emphasized the unusual nature of their meeting. His expression was one of careful diplomacy, tempered by the gravity of their situation. As he climbed onto the dock, his movements were fluid and deliberate, betraying none of the unease that might have accompanied such a rare encounter. Mara's voice broke the silence, steady and measured despite the tension that lingered in the air. "I never thought I'd be standing side by side with a mermaid prince," she said, her tone carrying a mix of grudging respect and wary curiosity. The words hung in the air, a reflection of the surreal reality they now faced. The weight of the prophecy and the necessity of their alliance were evident in her gaze, even as she maintained a controlled demeanor. Cale responded with a nod, his expression inscrutable, but his eyes reflecting the seriousness of the moment. "Yet here we are," he replied, his voice smooth and authoritative. "We must set aside our differences for now. The prophecy has given us no choice but to collaborate." His words conveyed both the urgency of their situation and a grudging acceptance of their forced partnership. As they prepared to discuss their next steps, the air between them was charged with the promise of a complex alliance forged under the shadow of impending crisis. Cale's gaze met Mara's with a mixture of skepticism and steely resolve, his eyes reflecting the moonlight as they locked onto hers. The tension between them was palpable, a thin line stretched taut by the circumstances that had brought them together. His sleek, azure scales shimmered under the moon's glow, adding an almost otherworldly quality to his presence. The dim light played across his face, highlighting the determination etched into his features. "The prophecy has made our paths cross in ways neither of us anticipated," Cale said, his voice calm yet underscored with a sense of urgency. His tone carried the weight of their shared predicament, and despite the stark differences between them, there was an unspoken recognition of the gravity of their situation. The calm waters of the cove seemed to echo his words, amplifying the seriousness of the discussion. Mara's stance was resolute, her hand still resting on her sword but now lowered in a gesture of tentative truce. She met Cale's gaze with a mixture of challenge and curiosity, her eyes reflecting the flickering light of the torches that lined the dock. "We don't have the luxury of time to deal with old grievances," she replied, her voice steady but laced with the tension of their uneasy alliance. The sea whispered around them, a constant reminder of the world that lay between their disparate realms. Cale nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. "We must set aside our enmity and focus on the threat at hand," he continued, his voice unwavering. His expression was one of firm resolve, the seriousness of the situation evident in every line of his face. The shadows of the cove seemed to deepen as he spoke, underscoring the gravity of their mission. "If the assassination plot is as serious as it seems," Cale added, his gaze sweeping over the darkened waters, "it's in both our interests to uncover and prevent it." The urgency in his voice was tempered by a calculated calmness, a sign of his readiness to collaborate despite their conflicting backgrounds. The serene surface of the ocean belied the turbulent reality of their circumstances, creating a stark contrast to the tension of their conversation. Mara's features softened slightly, the intensity of her initial stance giving way to a grudging acceptance of the necessity of their alliance. "Agreed," she said, her voice carrying a note of reluctant cooperation. The moonlight continued to cast its silvery glow over the scene, highlighting the shared sense of responsibility that had emerged from their confrontation. Their mutual acknowledgement of the threat served as a bridge between their worlds, setting the stage for a tentative but crucial partnership. The quiet of the night was punctuated by the distant sounds of the sea, a reminder of the vast and unpredictable forces that lay beyond their immediate concerns. As they prepared to tackle the impending danger, the weight of their newfound alliance was felt deeply by both. As they turned to discuss their next steps, the interplay of light and shadow on the water seemed to mirror the complexity of their situation. The promise of cooperation hung in the air, mingling with the lingering remnants of their earlier conflict. The night around them was alive with the tension of what was to come, marking the beginning of an uneasy yet vital collaboration. The moonlight cast long, wavering shadows over the secluded cove as the two leaders stood facing each other. The silence between them was thick, laden with the weight of unspoken grudges and cautious respect. The air was heavy with the scent of salt and seaweed, and the distant murmur of waves provided a rhythmic backdrop to their tense exchange. Mara's gaze was unwavering as she took a deep breath, the cool night air mixing with the resolve in her voice. "Agreed," she said, her tone firm and final. Her eyes locked onto Cale's, searching for any hint of insincerity or hesitation. The light from the torches flickered, casting a soft glow on her determined face and highlighting the seriousness of the situation. "But make no mistake, Cale, this alliance is a means to an end," Mara continued, her voice carrying the gravity of her words. The tension between her declaration and the fragile truce they had forged was palpable, a reminder of the underlying discord that still simmered beneath their cooperation. Her hand, which had momentarily rested on her sword, now lay by her side, a subtle gesture of both readiness and restraint. Cale's expression remained composed, his eyes reflecting the cool blue of the ocean as he considered her words. The moonlight played across his scales, creating an almost ethereal effect as he took in Mara's stance. "I understand," he replied, his voice steady and measured. The shadows around them seemed to deepen, accentuating the seriousness of their agreement and the uncertainty of their future interactions. As the words settled between them, a sense of cautious mutual respect began to form. The immediate threat had forged an alliance out of necessity, but the underlying tension was far from resolved. Cale's gaze remained fixed on Mara, his expression one of solemn acceptance as he acknowledged the terms of their partnership. The quiet of the cove seemed to close in around them, the sounds of the sea providing a constant reminder of the larger world beyond their uneasy alliance. The night was still, broken only by the occasional ripple of water against the shore and the faint crackle of the torches. The promise of future reassessment hung in the air, a reminder of the provisional nature of their cooperation. As they turned to begin their strategic planning, the weight of their agreement and the complex dynamics of their relationship set the stage for the challenges ahead. The moon continued its silent vigil over the ocean, its silvery light a witness to the beginning of a fraught yet crucial partnership. As Mara and Cale embarked on their uneasy collaboration, the oppressive weight of the prophecy seemed to settle heavily over their efforts. The night was a silent witness to their tentative alliance, with the moon casting a pale glow over their surroundings. Both leaders were acutely aware of the high stakes involved. The fate of their realms hung precariously in the balance, the foreboding message of the prophecy echoing in their minds. The threats they faced were manifold and complex, each layer adding to the intricate puzzle they were determined to solve. Their combined forces would need to unravel a dense web of political intrigue and deception that spanned both the surface and the depths of the ocean. The challenge ahead was daunting, filled with hidden dangers and concealed motives that would require more than just bravery to overcome. Navigating this treacherous terrain demanded more than just strategic acumen. It required a delicate dance of diplomacy and trust between Mara and Cale. Their initial distrust and animosity had to be set aside as they pooled their resources and knowledge. The tension between them was palpable, but it was overshadowed by the pressing need to uncover the truth behind the assassination plot that threatened their worlds. As they delved deeper into the investigation, the complexity of the situation became increasingly apparent. Each clue they uncovered seemed to lead to more questions, further entangling them in a web of deceit. Their journey was marked by moments of frustration and uncertainty, but also by glimmers of understanding and cooperation as they learned to navigate their differences. Their efforts to uncover the truth were met with numerous obstacles, both from within their own ranks and from external forces seeking to thwart their progress. The alliance they had forged was tested at every turn, pushing both Mara and Kale to their limits. Trust, once a fragile concept, began to grow between them, tempered by the shared urgency of their mission. The path ahead was fraught with peril, each step a reminder of the looming disaster that the prophecy had foretold. Their combined strengths and strategic minds were their greatest assets as they worked to prevent the catastrophe that seemed to draw ever closer. The gravity of their task was never far from their thoughts, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. As they continued their efforts, Mara and Kale found themselves forging an unlikely bond amidst the chaos and danger. The challenges they faced were significant, but their shared goal provided a common ground on which to build a more profound understanding. Their alliance, though born of necessity, began to take on a deeper significance as they confronted their mutual adversaries. The night stretched on, and the prophecy's shadow continued to loom large over their journey. With each passing hour, the urgency of their mission grew more pronounced. The success of their alliance hinged on their ability to remain focused and resolute, even as the odds seemed stacked against them. As the moon dipped lower in the sky, Mara and Kale pressed forward with renewed determination. The road ahead was uncertain, but their resolve was unwavering. Together, they faced the looming disaster with a sense of purpose, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead in their quest to avert the prophecy's dark promise. Chapter 7: The Meeting of Minds. The moon hung high and luminous, casting a silvery sheen over the tranquil sea. Its soft light painted the waters in shades of silver and shadow as the sea serpent rocked gently in its secluded cove. The night breeze whispered through the black sails of the ship, their fabric fluttering softly in the still air. The peaceful scene was a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within Captain Mara Hawke. On deck, Mara paced with restless energy, her sharp eyes fixed on the distant horizon. The weight of the prophecy and the uneasy truce with Prince Kale weighed heavily on her mind. Her first encounter with the Mermaid Prince had been fraught with tension and hostility, a stark reminder of the animosity that still lingered between them. Now, bound together by the prophecy, their fates were entwined in a way either of them had anticipated. The cool night air carried the scent of salt and sea, mingling with Mara's troubled thoughts. She stopped occasionally, her gaze sweeping over the calm waters as if searching for answers among the gentle ripples. The prophecy's ominous words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the impending disaster that threatened both their worlds. The sea serpent continued to rock gently, the rhythmic motion a small comfort amid the unease. Mara's resolve was firm, but the burden of her new alliance with Kale was undeniable. The prophecy had forced them into an uneasy partnership, and the stakes of their collaboration were high. As the night deepened, she knew that their next meeting would be critical in forging a path forward through the uncertainty. With a final glance at the moonlit horizon, Mara steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The sea, serene and deceptive, mirrored the fragile calm before the storm. As the ship swayed gently in its cove, Mara prepared to face the complexities of their alliance, determined to navigate the troubled waters of both politics and prophecy. Below the surface, in the opulent depths of Atlantea's underwater palace, Prince Kael swam with a sense of grim determination. The grand corridors of the palace, adorned with iridescent coral and bioluminescent flora, glowed with a soft, ethereal light that seemed to mock the gravity of the situation. Each graceful stroke of his tail cut through the water with purpose, the weight of the prophecy pressing heavily upon him. Kael's azure scales shimmered in the dim light, reflecting a multitude of blues and greens as he moved. His mind raced with strategies and concerns, the ominous message of the prophecy echoing in his thoughts. The prophecy had not only stirred unrest among his people but had also laid bare the intricate dangers facing his kingdom. The delicate balance of power was shifting, and the implications were far-reaching. As he approached the rendezvous point with the sea serpent, Kael's resolve hardened. The very notion of having to collaborate with Captain Mara Hawk, the pirate he had once confronted with hostility, was a bitter pill to swallow. Yet the dire circumstances demanded that he set aside personal grievances and focus on the greater threat. The alliance, though uneasy, was essential for the survival of both their realms. The corridors of the palace seemed to close in around him as he neared the meeting point, the opulence of the surroundings a stark contrast to the turmoil within. Kael's thoughts were a whirlwind of strategy and urgency, weighing the potential risks and benefits of their collaboration. The delicate threads of trust and necessity were being woven into a fragile alliance. The rendezvous point was a secluded area of the palace where the light from the bioluminescent plants created a soft, shifting glow. Kael paused at the edge of the meeting place, his gaze fixed on the entrance where the sea serpent would soon appear. His mind was focused, every sense attuned to the importance of this moment. The stakes were high, and the outcome of this meeting could very well determine the fate of Atlantia. With a deep breath, Kael steeled himself for the confrontation and the subsequent negotiation. The water around him was calm, but beneath the surface, a storm of emotions and responsibilities brewed. The alliance with Mara was not just a matter of political necessity, but also a personal challenge. He needed to approach this meeting with both caution and clarity. As the shadows of the palace merged with the darkness of the ocean outside, Kael prepared to face the pirate captain. The weight of the prophecy and the urgency of their shared mission hung heavily in the water. With a final, resolute glance at the approaching sea serpent, Kael resolved to navigate this precarious alliance with the determination required to protect his kingdom and secure a future for both realms. The moment of their meeting arrived with an air of palpable anticipation. Mara stood at the ship's rail, her posture rigid and commanding, as she awaited Prince Kael's arrival. The sea serpent bobbed gently in the moonlit cove, its dark sails flapping softly in the night breeze. Mara's eyes scanned the tranquil waters, searching for any sign of the approaching mermaid prince. The night was still, the only sound the gentle lapping of waves against the ship's hull. With a sudden burst of movement, Prince Kael emerged from the water, flanked by his elite guards. His entrance was nothing short of spectacular. His azure scales reflected the moonlight with an ethereal glow, casting an otherworldly shimmer across the surface. The water cascaded off his regal form as he ascended to the dock, each movement deliberate and poised. His presence was imposing, a blend of grace and authority that commanded attention. The dock itself seemed to hold its breath as Kael approached. The moon's silvery light illuminated the scene, highlighting the stark contrast between the rugged wooden planks of the dock and the sleek, bioluminescent elegance of the mermaid prince. The air crackled with tension, an invisible force field charged with the weight of their unresolved conflict and the gravity of their shared predicament. Mara's gaze met Kael's, her expression a mixture of wariness and steely resolve. Mara's hand rested on the hilt of her sword, the weapon's handle cool and reassuring against her palm. Her stance was a study in contradictions, poised and confident, yet bristling with the readiness to defend her ship against any perceived threat. The pirate captain's eyes, sharp and focused, locked onto Cale, measuring the distance between them with a mix of guarded curiosity and strategic calculation. As Cale's guards took their positions around the dock, their presence added a layer of formality and security to the encounter. Their elaborate, shimmering armor reflected the moonlight, further emphasizing the grandeur of the Mermaid Prince's retinue. The tension in the air was almost tangible, a reminder of the fraught history between Mara and Cale and the significance of their uneasy alliance. Cale finally reached the edge of the dock, his gaze steady and unyielding. The water that clung to his scales glittered like liquid stars, a visual testament to his otherworldly nature. His eyes, deep and expressive, held a mix of determination and unease, mirroring the complex emotions that roiled beneath the surface. He studied Mara with an intensity that spoke of the stakes involved in their collaboration. "Captain Mara Hawke," Cale's voice rang out, carrying a tone of formality and respect despite the underlying tension. "I trust you're prepared to discuss the matters that concern both our realms." His words, while measured, held an edge of urgency, reflecting the gravity of the situation that had brought them together. Mara's response was crisp and unwavering, her voice cutting through the night air with equal parts resolve and wariness. "Prince Cale, I didn't expect this meeting to be under such strange circumstances. But if we're to avoid the disaster foretold by the prophecy, we'll need to set aside our differences and focus on the task at hand." Her gaze remained locked on Cale, a silent challenge and a call to action. As the two leaders faced each other, the moon continued its silent vigil, casting its silvery sheen over the ocean and the dock. The night was charged with the weight of their shared mission and the uneasy truce that had brought them together. The stage was set for a conversation that would determine the course of their alliance and, ultimately, the fate of their intertwined worlds. As Cale reached the dock, his imposing figure emerged from the moonlit water, casting a shimmering reflection on the surface. His scales glistened with an otherworldly light, and his demeanor conveyed a mix of skepticism and resolve. The Mermaid Prince's gaze was steady as he regarded Mara, his expression a blend of formality and earnestness. The air around them seemed to crackle with the weight of their shared responsibility, heightening the tension of their unexpected alliance. "The prophecy has made our paths cross in ways neither of us anticipated," Cale began, his voice carrying a calm yet urgent tone. The words cut through the cool night air, underscoring the gravity of their situation. As he spoke, his eyes remained locked on Mara, conveying a sense of the high stakes involved. His presence was a stark reminder of the complexities that had led them to this uneasy truce, and the necessity of their cooperation. Mara stood resolute, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her sword. She listened intently, her gaze sharp and focused. The soft rustling of the ship's sails and the distant murmur of the ocean provided a backdrop to the critical conversation unfolding before her. Cale's words hung in the air, a declaration of the necessity for unity in the face of a common threat. Despite her cautious nature, Mara understood the importance of setting aside their differences to confront the looming danger. "We must set aside our enmity and focus on the threat at hand," Cale continued, his voice carrying a sense of urgency. The moonlight illuminated the determined set of his jaw, and the reflection of his words in the water seemed to underscore their significance. His calm demeanor was a facade masking the intense resolve required to tackle the assassination plot threatening both their realms. The gravity of the prophecy had made their collaboration unavoidable, and Cale was intent on making the most of their precarious alliance. "If the assassination plot is as serious as it seems, it's in both our interests to uncover and prevent it," Cale concluded, his words cutting through the tension. The earnestness in his voice was matched by the seriousness of his gaze, reflecting the mutual benefit of their cooperation. Mara could see the sincerity in his eyes, and the shared burden of the prophecy created a common ground between them. The stakes were high, and both leaders understood the necessity of working together to safeguard their worlds. Mara finally nodded, her expression resolute despite the lingering wariness. "Agreed," she said, her voice steady. "We have no choice but to join forces and address this threat. Once the danger is averted, we can reassess our positions." Her words were a clear acknowledgement of the practicalities of their situation, setting the stage for an alliance born out of necessity rather than friendship. As Cale and Mara prepared to delve into the complexities of their shared mission, the moonlight continued to cast its ethereal glow, marking the beginning of their fraught but essential partnership. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly as she regarded Cale, the tension between them palpable under the moonlight. Despite the chilly air and the unsettling gravity of their situation, her gaze was unwavering and filled with a steely determination. The silver glow of the moon reflected off the ocean's surface, casting an ethereal light on their faces, emphasizing the seriousness of their discussion. Mara's stance was resolute, her posture and expression betraying none of the unease she felt. "I never thought I'd be standing side by side with a mermaid prince," she said, her voice steady and controlled despite the underlying tension. The words were a mixture of disbelief and acknowledgement, a reflection of the extraordinary nature of their alliance. The contrast between her rugged pirate attire and Cale's elegant, shimmering scales underscored the unlikely partnership that fate had thrust upon them. "But here we are," Mara continued, her voice firm as she addressed the mermaid prince. Her words were both an acceptance of their predicament and a recognition of the necessity that had brought them together. The surrounding darkness of the secluded cove seemed to press in around them, amplifying the importance of their conversation. Mara's resolve was clear. She was prepared to set aside personal grudges for the sake of their mutual goal. "Agreed," Mara finally conceded, her tone carrying the weight of their newfound alliance. "But make no mistake, Cale, this alliance is a means to an end." Her statement was unambiguous, reflecting her pragmatic approach to their situation. The moon's silvery light cast long shadows across the deck, adding to the sense of gravity that enveloped their interaction. "Once the danger has passed, we'll reassess our positions," Mara concluded, her voice steady and resolute. The clarity in her words was matched by the firm set of her jaw, signaling her commitment to addressing the immediate threat while keeping future considerations in mind. As she spoke, the distant murmur of the ocean and the gentle rustling of the ship's sails underscored the solemnity of their agreement, marking the beginning of an uneasy but crucial partnership. Cale's expression softened slightly, though the weight of their shared mission was evident. "Understood. For now, our goals align. We must focus on the larger threat and not let our personal differences derail our efforts." The moon hung high, casting a serene glow over the secluded cove where Mara and Cale stood. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken doubts and the enormity of their situation. The ambient light danced on the water's surface, creating shifting patterns of silver and shadow that mirrored the uncertainty in the air. Mara's eyes, hard and focused, briefly met Cale's, conveying a shared recognition of the gravity of their predicament. After a tense pause, Mara gave a curt nod, a small but significant gesture of acceptance towards the temporary alliance. The movement was brisk and decisive, signaling her willingness to set aside their differences for the moment. Cale's gaze remained steady, a mixture of skepticism and reluctant agreement reflecting in his eyes. The acknowledgement of their uneasy truce was a necessary step, but it did little to dispel the underlying tension between them. As they began to discuss their plans, the weight of the prophecy loomed over their conversation, like a dark cloud threatening to overshadow their every word. The prophecy's chilling predictions hung in the air, a constant reminder of the larger forces at play. The two leaders spoke with a sense of urgency, their voices rising and falling with the ebb and flow of the ocean, each sentence weighed down by the gravity of their shared burden. Mara's tone was practical, her focus on the immediate steps they needed to take. She laid out her strategies with precision, her words cutting through the night's stillness. Cale listened intently, his own responses measured and contemplative. The conversation was a careful balancing act, each leader trying to navigate the complexities of their alliance while remaining wary of each other's motives. The path to mutual trust was fraught with obstacles, evident in the cautious exchanges and the wary glances they exchanged. Both Mara and Cale were acutely aware of the fragile nature of their alliance. The potential for betrayal loomed large, and their conversations were tinged with an undercurrent of distrust. Yet they both understood the necessity of their collaboration, even if the road ahead was uncertain. The shadows cast by the flickering lanterns on the sea serpent and the bioluminescent glow from the depths of Atlantia highlighted the stark contrasts between their worlds. As they continued their discussions, the ambient light played tricks on their faces, creating a dance of light and dark that seemed almost symbolic of their uneasy partnership. Each moment was filled with the promise of potential, shadowed by the possibility of failure. Despite the tension, a shared sense of purpose began to emerge. Both Mara and Cale recognized the importance of their cooperation in averting the looming disaster. The intricate web of their discussions wove together the threads of strategy and caution, as they worked to forge a plan that could address the immediate threat while laying the groundwork for future collaboration. Their mutual goal, while not yet fully realized, was a beacon of hope amidst the uncertainty. As the night deepened and the moon cast its pale light over the cove, Mara and Cale's uneasy alliance took its first tentative steps. The weight of the prophecy, their personal animosities, and the daunting task ahead were constants in their minds. Yet, in that moment of tentative accord, both leaders understood that their combined efforts could be the key to navigating the treacherous waters of their shared fate. With their goals clearly defined and their resolve unshakable, Mara and Cale shifted their focus to the pressing task ahead. The moonlight bathed the cove in a silvery glow, casting long shadows that danced across the ship's deck and the rocky shoreline. The night's tranquility was a stark contrast to the urgency of their discussions, which echoed softly against the backdrop of the gently lapping waves. The sounds of their strategic conversation filled the air, a mix of measured tones and fervent exchanges. Mara's voice was steady and determined, her words crisp and deliberate as she laid out her observations and plans. Cale responded with equal seriousness, his voice carrying the weight of his princely authority, as he shared his insights and concerns. Their dialogue wove a tapestry of strategy and speculation, each word charged with the gravity of their situation. The future of both their realms hung precariously in the balance, a silent reminder of the stakes they faced. The complexity of their task was not lost on either leader. They were navigating a labyrinth of intrigue and deception, where every decision could have far-reaching consequences. The prophecy that had brought them together seemed to cast a shadow over every plan they discussed, its ominous implications a constant presence. As they spoke, the tension between them began to ebb slightly, replaced by a growing sense of shared purpose. The initial hostility and distrust were gradually giving way to a tentative cooperation, born out of necessity and a mutual understanding of the threat they faced. Despite their differences, Mara and Cale found themselves united by a common goal, their alliance a testament to their commitment to averting the impending disaster. The deck of the Sea Serpent and the coral corridors of Atlantia's palace seemed to blend into one another as their discussions continued. The ship's creaking timbers and the distant murmur of the ocean became a backdrop to their intense planning. The bioluminescent flora of the underwater realm flickered softly, casting an ethereal light that highlighted the determined expressions on their faces. Together, they tackled the complexities of their situation with a blend of pragmatism and hope. The challenge before them was daunting, but their combined expertise and resolve provided a glimmer of potential success. Each leader brought unique strengths to the table. Mara's tactical acumen and Kale's deep knowledge of his kingdom's intricacies created a formidable partnership. As the night wore on, the weight of their mission became more apparent. The intricacies of their plans began to take shape, each strategy discussed and refined with care. The darkness around them seemed to close in, but their focused determination illuminated the path forward, guiding them through the treacherous waters of their joint endeavor. In the quiet moments between their exchanges, the enormity of their task sank in. The delicate balance between cooperation and caution was a tightrope they had to walk, their every move potentially altering the course of their realms. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, there was a growing sense of resolve and camaraderie, a bond forged in the crucible of their shared crisis. As the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, the outlines of their plans were starting to crystallize. The night's strategic discussions had laid the groundwork for their alliance, and the road ahead, though fraught with challenges, was now illuminated by the promise of cooperation. Mara and Kale, despite their differences and the darkness of the prophecy, stood united in their commitment to safeguarding their worlds from the looming disaster. Chapter 8: A Joint Mission. The first light of dawn began to shimmer over the tranquil sea, casting a golden glow that pierced through the dark veil of night. The sea serpent floated gently in its secluded cove, the early rays of sunlight beginning to dissolve the shadows of the previous night. The once silent waters now reflected a soft, hopeful light, a stark contrast to the tension that had enveloped the ship only hours earlier. On deck, the remnants of Mara and Kale's intense discussions were scattered across the wooden surfaces, maps strewn about, scribbled notes piled haphazardly, and half-empty cups of coffee that hinted at long hours of strategizing. The scene was a testament to their tireless efforts and the gravity of their mission. The chaotic arrangement of their materials spoke volumes about the urgency and complexity of the task they faced. The uneasy alliance forged between the pirate captain and the mermaid prince had solidified into a shared purpose as the sun rose higher. Mara's resolute gaze and Kale's determined demeanor now reflected a newfound sense of unity, bound by their common goal. The weight of the prophecy and the threat of the assassination plot had transformed their mutual suspicion into a focused collaboration. As the last vestiges of night gave way to day, the sea serpent began to stir with the activity of the crew preparing for their joint mission. The early light illuminated the ship's dark sails and glinted off the edges of the scattered papers, symbolizing the beginning of their new endeavor. Both Mara and Kale, despite their different worlds, were driven by the same resolve, to uncover the truth and safeguard their respective realms. With the dawn's promise of a new day, the ship readied itself for the journey ahead. The morning light not only brightened the sea but also heralded a fresh chapter in their alliance. As they set their sights on the horizon, the sea serpent symbolized more than just a vessel. It was the embodiment of their combined effort to thwart the impending threat and secure a future for both Eldoria and Atlantia. Mara and Kale stood at the rail of the ship, their figures etched against the backdrop of the soft morning light. The first rays of dawn painted their faces in a gentle glow, highlighting the traces of fatigue and determination that marked their features. The air around them was cool and crisp, carrying with it the faint, invigorating scent of salt and seaweed, a reminder of the vast expanse that lay before them. The previously palpable tension between them had begun to ebb away, replaced by a burgeoning sense of camaraderie. The night's intense discussions had forged a bond between the pirate captain and the mermaid prince, transforming their reluctant partnership into a resolute collaboration. As they stood side by side, their shared purpose seemed to bridge the gap between their disparate worlds. Mara's sharp eyes were fixed on the horizon, her gaze steady and unwavering. The early light glinted off her features, revealing a new layer of resolve that had emerged through the shared trials of the night. Her readiness to face the challenges ahead was evident in the way she scanned the distant waters, her posture a blend of alertness and determination. Beside her, Cale's regal posture and azure scales caught the delicate morning light, their iridescent hues shimmering with each subtle movement. His presence was marked by a quiet strength, his commitment to the mission as unyielding as the ocean itself. The contrast between his aquatic grace and Mara's grounded demeanor created a striking tableau, symbolizing the union of their efforts. The once divided goals of their respective kingdoms now aligned under the shared weight of their mission. The sun's ascent seemed to underscore the importance of their collaboration, casting a warm glow over the ship and highlighting the unity that had emerged from their earlier discord. The sea serpent cut through the water with renewed purpose, its dark sails billowing softly in the morning breeze. As the ship continued its journey, the early light revealed a new chapter in their alliance. The horizon ahead was both a promise and a challenge, and both Mara and Cale were prepared to confront whatever lay beyond. Their combined strength and determination now fueled their quest, turning the ship into a beacon of their unified resolve. In this tranquil moment, amidst the soft murmur of the waves and the distant cry of seabirds, the foundations of their partnership solidified. The bond between the pirate captain and the mermaid prince had transformed from mere necessity into a genuine alliance, their shared purpose guiding them through the early hours of their journey. The calm sea reflected the newfound harmony that had emerged between them. As they stood together, the morning light continued to grow, illuminating their path forward. The sea serpent moved steadily through the water, a symbol of their commitment and the promise of their combined strength. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but for the first time, the partnership between Mara and Cale felt like a true alliance, ready to face the challenges of their intertwined fates. Today we begin unraveling the conspiracy that threatens both our kingdoms, Mara said, her voice steady and authoritative as she addressed Cale. The early morning light cast a soft glow on her determined face, highlighting the resolve in her eyes. She glanced at Cale, whose expression was serious but carried a glimmer of hope, reflecting his readiness to tackle the task ahead. Cale nodded in agreement, his azure scales shimmering slightly in the light as he acknowledged her words. The weight of their mission was evident in his posture, a blend of regal composure and palpable tension. Indeed, he replied, his voice calm yet firm. We must sift through the leads and intel we've gathered with meticulous care. Finding concrete evidence of the plot is our first priority. Mara's gaze shifted to the array of maps and documents spread out before them on the deck. The papers, now illuminated by the morning sun, were a testament to the depth of their investigation. She continued, We'll need to identify the key players behind this conspiracy and understand their motivations. Every detail counts, and our combined resources will be crucial. Cale's eyes followed Mara's gaze, taking in the scattered notes and detailed plans. He added, The sooner we uncover the truth, the better our chances of averting the disaster the prophecy foretells. This mission requires both our skills and our trust in each other. We must act swiftly and decisively. With a final nod, Mara turned her attention back to the task at hand. The cool morning breeze stirred the ship's sails, a silent witness to their resolve. Let's begin, she said, her voice carrying the weight of their shared determination. The sea serpent was set on a course toward uncovering the truth, and the alliance between Mara and Kale was now focused on the daunting challenge ahead. Kale responded with a calm assurance that belied the gravity of their situation. His gaze remained steady as he spoke, his voice calm yet carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "We must be thorough and discreet," he said, his tone unwavering despite the weight of their task. The morning light danced on his azure scales, casting an ethereal glow that seemed almost out of place against the backdrop of their tense mission. Mara, listening intently, took in the seriousness of Kale's words. The early sun illuminated the deck, revealing the scattered maps and documents they had reviewed throughout the night. Her eyes met Kale's, reflecting a shared understanding of the stakes involved. The sea breeze rustled her hair and flooded the edges of their papers, adding a sense of motion to their conversation. "The prophecy has warned us of deception and danger lurking in every corner," Kale continued, his voice carrying the weight of his resolve. His posture remained rigid, the confidence in his demeanor belying the complexity of their mission. The shimmering water around the sea serpent seemed almost tranquil in comparison to the turbulent situation they faced. Mara nodded, her expression set with determination. "Agreed. We need to ensure that our every move is calculated and that we're prepared for any eventuality." Her gaze was sharp, and she picked up a map from the deck, studying the intricate details with practiced focus. The alliance between them was now centered on a meticulous plan, driven by the urgency of their shared goal. Kale's eyes remained locked on Mara's, reflecting the seriousness of their joint effort. "Our combined efforts must be flawless," he said. "The deception we face could come from anywhere, and our ability to navigate through it depends on our attention to detail and our readiness for any challenges that arise." As they spoke, the deck of the sea serpent seemed to pulse with their shared determination. The ship rocked gently with the movements of the sea, a silent witness to the gravity of their mission. The early morning light began to warm the deck, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the intricate plans they were setting in motion. With a final nod, Kale and Mara turned their attention to their preparations. The mission ahead would test their resolve and their ability to work together despite their initial tensions. "Let's move forward," Kale said firmly, his voice carrying a note of finality. The sea serpent was ready to sail into uncharted waters, with its crew and passengers bound by a common purpose and an unspoken understanding of the challenges to come. The two leaders then turned to their respective crews and allies, each group readying themselves for the intricate mission that lay ahead. The early morning light glistened on the sea, casting a golden hue over the bustling deck of the sea serpent. Mara's crew, a seasoned group of pirates with hardened faces and keen eyes, moved with practiced efficiency. Their years of experience on the high seas had honed their skills in gathering intelligence and scouting potential threats, making them a formidable asset in the search for the assassination plot's roots. Mara stood among them, her commanding presence rallying her crew. She issued instructions with a clear, authoritative tone, her voice carrying over the sound of creaking wood and murmured conversations. The pirates, accustomed to danger and secrecy, began to assemble their gear and review their maps, their expressions a mix of determination and excitement. Their task was clear: to delve into the complexities of the surface world and uncover any leads that might point to the conspiracy threatening both kingdoms. On the other side of the cove, beneath the shimmering surface of the ocean, Kale's elite guards and advisors gathered in the grand underwater palace of Atlantia. The palace, with its opalescent walls and bioluminescent flora, seemed to glow with an ethereal light as the sun's rays filtered through the water. The Mermaid Prince's guards, clad in armor that mirrored the hues of the sea, prepared for their own critical role in the mission. Their familiarity with Atlantia's depths and its hidden passageways would be crucial in investigating the underwater aspects of the plot. Kale's advisors, experts in Atlantean politics and underwater geography, conferred in low, urgent tones. Maps and scrolls were spread across large coral tables, their intricate details reflecting the soft, ambient light. The advisors' faces were etched with concern as they discussed strategies and potential threats, their deep knowledge of Atlantea's secrets and its political landscape a key component in their investigation. As both groups prepared, the tension of their shared mission created a palpable sense of urgency. Mara's crew made their final checks, ensuring they had all the necessary tools and provisions for their reconnaissance. The pirates' agile movements and sharp eyes were a testament to their readiness for the dangerous tasks ahead. Their camaraderie and trust in Mara's leadership were evident as they finalized their plans. In the underwater palace, Kale and his guards undertook similar preparations. The elite guards adjusted their weapons and gear, ready to navigate the treacherous underwater terrain. Their expressions were resolute, reflecting their commitment to protecting Atlantia and uncovering the truth behind the plot. The advisors continued to pore over their documents, ensuring no detail was overlooked in their search for clues. As the final preparations were completed, the two leaders reconvened to brief their teams on the joint mission. The Sea Serpent bobbed gently in the cove, its crew ready to embark on their perilous journey, while Kale's guards and advisors readied themselves for their underwater exploration. The weight of their responsibility was heavy, but the shared goal provided a sense of unity and purpose. With the sun climbing higher in the sky, casting its light over the sea and the shimmering waters of Atlantia, the two groups set out on their respective tasks. The mission had begun, and both Mara and Kale were acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. Their alliance, though forged under tense circumstances, was now their strongest asset in the quest to uncover and thwart the assassination plot threatening their realms. As the preparations continued, the atmosphere aboard the Sea Serpent buzzed with a blend of anticipation and focused energy. The deck, once a familiar stage for Mara's pirating endeavors, now thrummed with the urgent hum of their joint mission. The crew, accustomed to the unpredictable nature of their voyages, moved with practiced efficiency, their movements a dance of purpose as they readied themselves for the task ahead. Maps were unfurled, gear was checked, and last-minute adjustments were made with a sense of determined urgency. Mara, standing at the helm, exuded a commanding presence that anchored the crew's frenzied activity. Her sharp eyes were constantly assessing the situation, ensuring that every detail was attended to. Despite the novelty of the alliance with Prince Kale and his elite guards, Mara's confidence and leadership inspired her crew. They adapted quickly to the new dynamic, their initial skepticism giving way to a focused determination as they embraced the challenge. Below the deck, Kale's guards, though initially wary of their surface counterparts, were beginning to forge a sense of mutual respect. The mermaid guards, who had been accustomed to the structured environment of Atlantia's underwater palace, found themselves navigating the rugged, weathered space of the Sea Serpent. Their finely crafted armor and disciplined demeanor contrasted sharply with the pirates' more casual attire, but there was a growing recognition of each other's strengths. The interaction between the two groups was a study in contrasts. Kale's guards, with their ethereal, water-slick scales and meticulous precision, worked alongside Mara's crew, who moved with the easy familiarity of seasoned sailors. Conversations, initially stilted and cautious, gradually became more collaborative. The blending of their skills and resources began to show promise, as strategies were exchanged and plans were refined. Despite the differences in their backgrounds, there was a shared understanding of the mission's gravity. Mara's crew admired the mermaid guards' discipline and strategic acumen, while Kale's guards came to appreciate the pirates' adaptability and resourcefulness. This newfound respect was evident in the way they collaborated, exchanging insights and pooling their expertise to strengthen their collective efforts. As the day progressed, the sense of unity between the two groups solidified. The Sea Serpent was now a hive of coordinated activity, with the crew and guards working side by side. The ship's deck was alive with the sounds of preparation, ropes being coiled, provisions being stowed, and equipment being tested. The once separate worlds of surface piracy and underwater nobility were starting to merge into a single, focused team. With the final touches completed and the sun setting over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the ocean, the Sea Serpent prepared to set sail. The combined efforts of Mara's crew and Kale's guards promised to make their joint mission more effective. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of accomplishment and readiness as the ship weighed anchor and began its journey into the unknown. The alliance, though forged under tense circumstances, was now a testament to their shared commitment to uncovering and thwarting the assassination plot threatening their realms. By midday, the Sea Serpent was a vision of readiness, its black sails unfurled like dark wings ready to catch the wind. The ship's deck was bustling with activity as the crew moved with practiced efficiency, their preparations a blend of nautical expertise and focused urgency. Ropes were secured, supplies were checked, and the final adjustments were made in anticipation of the journey ahead. The once chaotic energy of the ship now hummed with a sense of purpose, reflecting the gravity of the mission at hand. At the edge of the dock, Kale stood with a solemn expression, his gaze sweeping over the glittering expanse of Atlantia. The underwater kingdom sparkled in the midday sun, its beauty a stark contrast to the weight of the task that lay before him. The mermaid prince's scales shimmered in the sunlight, a regal presence amid the bustling preparations. As he took one last look at his home, the grandeur of Atlantia seemed to blur with the resolve in his eyes. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with challenges, each wave and current a potential obstacle in their path. Kale's thoughts were a whirl of strategy and concern, aware that the stakes were too high for hesitation. The uneasy alliance he had forged with Captain Mara Hawke, while born out of necessity, had become a vital component in their quest to uncover and thwart the assassination plot threatening both their realms. The urgency of their mission overshadowed the personal reservations that lingered from their initial confrontation. As Kale boarded the Sea Serpent, the transition from the serene beauty of Atlantia to the rugged reality of the ship was palpable. The transition from the elegance of his underwater palace to the practical, weather-beaten environment of the pirate vessel was stark. Despite the differences in their surroundings, Kale's resolve remained unwavering. His purpose was clear: to protect Atlantia and ensure the safety of their allied kingdom, regardless of the personal discomforts or the challenges ahead. The final preparations were completed, and the time to depart had arrived. With a deep breath and a final glance at the horizon, Kale took his place aboard the Sea Serpent. The ship's crew and Kale's own guards exchanged nods of mutual respect, acknowledging the significance of their shared mission. As the ship began to pull away from the dock, the sound of creaking wood and the flutter of sails filled the air, signaling the start of a journey that would test their alliance and their resolve. As Mara and Kale took their positions on the Sea Serpent, their shared determination was evident in their focused expressions and purposeful movements. The ship's deck, now a hub of coordinated activity, seemed to hum with the energy of their collective resolve. Mara, with her commanding presence and sharp eyes, surveyed her crew as they prepared for the voyage, while Kale, his regal bearing unshaken, offered quiet instructions to his guards. Both leaders were acutely aware of the stakes involved, and their mutual commitment was the cornerstone of their alliance. The mission ahead was not just a test of tactical prowess. It was a complex challenge that demanded more than strategy alone. Trust and cooperation between Mara and Kale were essential, as they navigated a treacherous path fraught with intrigue and danger. Their alliance, forged in the heat of urgency and necessity, would be tested by the hidden threats that lay ahead. The intricacies of their joint effort required them to set aside past grievances and focus on their shared goal. As the ship sailed into the vast expanse of the ocean, the enormity of their undertaking became increasingly clear. The horizon stretched out endlessly, a vast canvas of possibilities and perils. Mara and Cale's eyes, though focused on the distant expanse, were keenly aware of the need to remain vigilant. The ocean, once a mere backdrop to their personal conflicts, now symbolized the unknown challenges they would face together. With their goals aligned and their resolve steadfast, Mara and Cale moved in unison, each action a testament to their determination. The sea serpent cut through the water with purpose, its black sails billowing in the wind as it navigated toward its destination. Every creak of the ship and flutter of the sails echoed their commitment to the mission, a reminder of the journey they had embarked upon and the critical task that lay ahead. Their shared quest to prevent disaster and secure the futures of both Eldoria and Atlantia was more than a mere alliance. It was a profound partnership forged in the crucible of crisis. As they faced the daunting unknown, the combined strength of their resolve and resources became their greatest asset. The weight of the prophecy, the looming threat of the assassination plot, and the complex web of political intrigue all demanded that they rise above personal differences and work together. The vastness of the ocean around them was both a challenge and a symbol of their journey. The open sea represented the uncharted territory they were about to explore, a realm where danger and opportunity intertwined. Mara and Cale's unity was crucial in navigating this complex landscape, and their shared determination was a beacon of hope amidst the uncertainty. As the sea serpent continued its voyage, the bond between Mara and Cale grew stronger, solidified by their mutual purpose. The path ahead remained fraught with danger, but their commitment to each other and their shared mission provided a foundation of strength. Together, they set forth into the unknown, driven by the knowledge that their collaboration could make the difference between disaster and redemption for their realms. Chapter 9: Secrets and Lies. The sea serpent cut through the ocean's vast expanse with a steady, rhythmic motion, its black sails billowing softly in the chill of a moonless night. The ship's dark silhouette was barely discernible against the endless, inky blackness of the water. On deck, Mara and Cale stood close together, their faces illuminated only by the faint glow of lanterns swaying with the ship's movement. The weight of their joint mission pressed heavily upon them. Mara's sharp eyes flickered over the intelligence reports spread out before them, her brow furrowed in concentration. Each document and map seemed to weave a more intricate pattern of deceit, linking their two worlds in an unsettling web of conspiracies. Her hands, usually so steady on the ship's wheel, trembled slightly as she traced the lines of the latest report, her mind racing to piece together the puzzle. Beside her, Cale's azure scales glinted faintly in the dim light, reflecting the gravity of the situation. His expression was one of grim determination, the usual calmness in his eyes replaced by a focused intensity. The prince was absorbed in the reports, his sharp mind trying to untangle the threads of the complex scheme they were up against. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of the danger they faced. The air on deck was thick with anticipation and unease. The gentle lapping of the waves against the hull seemed to be a mere backdrop to the tension that crackled between Mara and Cale. Every new piece of intelligence added another layer of complexity to their mission, revealing connections and alliances that neither of them had anticipated. The realization that their realms were entwined in such a dangerous conspiracy weighed heavily on both of them. Mara's eyes darted between the various documents, her mind working feverishly to understand the full scope of the plot. She glanced occasionally at Cale, noting the determination etched on his face. The prince's calm demeanor was a steadying influence, and Mara found a measure of reassurance in his presence. They were united in their resolve, though the task ahead seemed daunting. As the sea serpent continued its course through the dark waters, Mara and Cale remained locked in their intense scrutiny of the intelligence reports. The ship's steady motion contrasted sharply with the turbulence of their thoughts. Each revelation brought them closer to understanding the full extent of the threat they faced, but it also deepened the uncertainty of their mission. The tangled web of deception was a formidable adversary, and both leaders knew that their next steps would be crucial in uncovering the truth. The night had stretched long and tense aboard the Sea Serpent, filled with fevered discussion and frantic investigation. The black sails fluttered softly in the pre-dawn chill, and the ship cut through the still waters with a steady, rhythmic motion. As the first light of dawn began to pierce the darkness, the results of their relentless work started to take shape. The initial leads had hinted at a dangerous plot nearing fruition, but the more they uncovered, the more intricate and far-reaching the conspiracy seemed to be. Mara, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a lantern, studied the scattered reports with a furrowed brow. Her eyes, usually sharp and steady, were narrowed in deep concentration as she tried to piece together the fragmented pieces of the puzzle. The evidence they had gathered revealed not just a single rogue faction but a network of high-level conspirators whose reach extended into both their worlds. Beside her, Cale hovered over a detailed map, his azure scales catching the faint morning light as he traced connections with a delicate web of threads. His expression was one of intense focus, the calm demeanor he usually projected giving way to a visible strain. The complexity of the conspiracy was unfolding before him, each new detail adding to the gravity of the situation. The prince's sharp eyes met Mara's, conveying his own growing concern. "It's becoming clear that this isn't just a rogue faction or isolated plot," Mara said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that laced her tone. "The conspiracy is rooted much deeper." She looked up from the documents, her gaze meeting Cale's with a mixture of frustration and resolve. The implications of their findings were heavy, suggesting a network of betrayal and deceit that spanned both their realms. Cale nodded slowly, his thoughts racing as he absorbed the magnitude of Mara's words. "Indeed," he replied, his voice carrying a note of grim determination. "This is more than we initially thought. We're dealing with a coordinated effort that threatens both Atlantia and Eldoria." His fingers traced a path on the map, indicating the far-reaching connections that tied the conspiracy together. The weight of their discovery pressed heavily upon him, fueling his resolve to act decisively. The dawn light continued to creep over the horizon, casting a golden hue over the ship's deck and highlighting the tired faces of Mara and Cale. The night's intense labor had brought them to the brink of understanding, but the full scope of the threat was still unfolding. The complexity of the conspiracy meant that their task was far from over, and the urgency to prevent the impending disaster grew more pressing with each passing moment. Mara straightened, her gaze fixed on Cale as she absorbed the magnitude of their situation. "We need to move quickly," she said, her voice resolute. "If the conspiracy is as deep-rooted as it appears, we're running out of time to stop it. We must identify all the key players involved and dismantle their plans before they can execute their plot." Her determination was palpable, a reflection of the shared commitment that had grown between them despite the rocky start. Cale met her gaze with a nod of agreement, his own resolve hardened by the gravity of their findings. "Agreed. We need to act swiftly and strategically. Let's compile everything we've learned and map out our next steps." The safety of both our kingdoms depends on our ability to uncover the full extent of this conspiracy and neutralize it before it's too late. As the first light of dawn painted the ocean in hues of gold and pink, the two leaders prepared to confront the daunting challenge ahead, their alliance now solidified by their shared purpose. Kale, his azure scales reflecting the dim light of the lanterns, took a deep breath, the weight of their findings pressing heavily upon him. The soft glow of the lamps cast a subdued, flickering light across his face, highlighting the tension etched into his features. His expression was one of deep contemplation as he absorbed the full scope of their discovery. The maps and documents scattered around them seemed to pulse with the gravity of the situation, each piece of evidence further entangling the conspiracy between their realms. The involvement of high-level conspirators from both our worlds complicates matters significantly, Kale said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge of concern. His words hung in the air, resonating with the weight of their implications. The realization that the threat extended beyond a singular, isolated plot to a coordinated effort involving key figures from both Eldoria and Atlantia was unsettling. His sharp gaze met Mara's, reflecting his own anxiety about the depth of their adversary's reach. Mara listened intently, her own thoughts mirroring the unease in Kale's voice. The flickering lanterns created a play of shadows on her face, accentuating the determination that had hardened in her eyes. "We're not just dealing with a threat to our own thrones," she replied, her tone steady despite the gravity of their situation. "This is a concerted effort to undermine both our kingdoms from within. We need to approach this with the utmost caution." Kale nodded, his expression resolute despite the concern evident in his eyes. The light reflecting off his scales seemed to intensify as he continued. "Indeed. Our adversaries have proven their capability to orchestrate a plot of this scale. It's clear now that our mission is far more intricate than we initially thought." He paused, his gaze drifting to the maps strewn across the table, as if seeking answers within their convoluted patterns. The atmosphere between them was thick with the weight of their realization. The lantern's soft glow did little to chase away the shadows of the conspiracy that had begun to cast its dark pall over their mission. "We need to adapt our strategy," Mara said, her voice firm. "We must identify and neutralize the key players involved before their plans come to fruition. Our next steps must be calculated and precise." Kale's eyes met hers with a renewed determination, the unease giving way to a steely resolve. "Agreed. We must be vigilant and thorough. This conspiracy threatens not only our thrones but the very stability of our realms. Let's gather our findings, reassess our approach, and prepare to confront this threat head-on. The fate of both our worlds depends on our ability to overcome this challenge." Mara turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the dark water seemed to stretch endlessly, mirroring the depths of her thoughts. The moon's reflection danced across the waves, casting a silvery sheen that did little to lighten the somber mood. Her eyes, fixed on the far-off line where the sea met the sky, conveyed the gravity of their situation. The enormity of the conspiracy they faced was as vast and foreboding as the ocean before her. "The fact that they've managed to keep this plot hidden from us speaks to their power and influence," Mara said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. The words echoed softly in the quiet night, carried by the faint sound of the ship's gentle rocking. Her expression was one of intense focus, the flickering lantern light casting shadows that accentuated her determined gaze. "We need to identify these conspirators quickly and uncover their ultimate objective," Mara continued, turning back to face Kale. Her resolve was palpable, her stance reflecting her readiness to confront the danger head-on. The lanterns cast a warm glow on her face, contrasting sharply with the cold realization of their predicament. "If we don't, we risk not only our own lives but the stability of both our realms." Kale's expression mirrored her concern, his azure scales catching the dim light in a way that highlighted his steely resolve. "You're right," he said, his voice calm but filled with a sense of shared determination. "Our immediate priority must be to piece together the clues and reveal the full extent of the conspiracy. Only by understanding their motives and disrupting their plans can we hope to secure our kingdom's futures." Cale's mind raced through the implications of their findings, his sharp eyes reflecting the gravity of their situation. The dim lantern light cast shadows across his face, accentuating the deep furrows of concentration. The weight of the prophecy and the complexity of the conspiracy were evident in his stern expression. The enormity of the threat they faced required more than just vigilance, it demanded a meticulous and strategic approach. "We must proceed with extreme caution," Cale said, his voice steady but laden with urgency. His gaze swept over the scattered maps and intelligence reports spread across the table, each document a fragment of a larger, more intricate puzzle. The soft glow of the lanterns flickered in his eyes, highlighting the resolve etched into his features. The prophecy warned of deception and danger lurking in every corner. Trusting the wrong allies or missing a crucial detail could spell disaster. He paused, the weight of his words hanging in the air. The quiet hum of the ship and the gentle swaying beneath them seemed to amplify the intensity of the moment. Cale's voice carried the gravity of their situation, a reminder of the stakes involved. "We'll need to coordinate our efforts carefully, using the resources of both our teams to unravel this conspiracy," he continued, his tone resolute. "Every move must be calculated and deliberate." Mara nodded in agreement, her eyes reflecting the same determination. She understood the urgency and the necessity of their cautious approach. "Agreed," she replied, her voice firm. "Our success hinges on our ability to work together and to remain vigilant against the deception that surrounds us. We can't afford any missteps." Cale's gaze met hers with unwavering resolve. "Let's review our findings and consolidate our strategies," he suggested, his voice resolute. "We need to ensure that our next steps are informed by every piece of intelligence we have. Our combined strength and careful planning will be our greatest assets in overcoming this threat." The two leaders exchanged a look of mutual resolve, their eyes locking with an intensity that transcended their past conflicts. For a moment, the shadows of their previous tensions seemed to dissolve in the light of their shared purpose. The gravity of the situation had shifted their focus, pushing aside any lingering animosity. They were now united by a pressing need that demanded their full attention. Standing side by side, Mara and Cale could feel the weight of their alliance settling heavily upon their shoulders. The stakes had never been higher, and the enormity of the conspiracy demanded that their uneasy partnership evolve into something far more robust and cohesive. Each leader recognized that their combined strength was essential to navigating the complex web of deception threatening both their realms. The soft light of the lanterns flickered around them, casting an ethereal glow on their faces and highlighting the determination etched in their expressions. Their previous disagreements and rivalries seemed trivial compared to the looming threat that they now faced together. The lines of their faces, etched with the marks of past battles and struggles, reflected a new resolve to protect their respective kingdoms. The hum of the ship and the distant sounds of the ocean blended into the backdrop of their intense discussion, reinforcing the gravity of their mission. Every decision, every piece of information, and every move would now be scrutinized with the utmost care. Both Mara and Cale understood that their alliance had to transform from a temporary solution into a formidable and enduring partnership. Mara's hand rested on the table where their plans and intelligence reports lay scattered. Her gaze shifted from Cale to the documents, her mind racing through potential strategies and scenarios. "We've faced challenges before," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "But this is different. We need to be at our best, to truly trust each other, and to act decisively. Cale's expression mirrored her resolve. The flicker of determination in his eyes was a testament to his commitment. "Agreed," he said, his voice carrying the weight of their shared responsibility. "Our success depends on how well we can integrate our strengths and overcome the obstacles before us. Let's move forward with clarity and unity." As the first light of dawn began to seep into the room, the two leaders prepared to embark on their joint mission. The new day brought with it the promise of action and the hope of resolving the conspiracy that threatened their worlds. With their alliance solidified, Mara and Cale set their sights on the daunting task ahead, ready to confront the challenges with a united front. As the first light of dawn began to creep across the sea, painting the horizon with soft hues of gold and pink, Mara and Cale emerged from their quarters with a renewed sense of purpose. The tranquil beauty of the morning belied the intensity of the task that lay ahead. The two leaders gathered their respective crews and allies on the deck of the Sea Serpent, their faces set with a mix of determination and resolve. The crew of the Sea Serpent, accustomed to the unpredictability of pirate life, was already busy preparing for the day's operations. Their movements were purposeful as they assembled equipment, reviewed maps, and readied themselves for the task of gathering intelligence. On the opposite side, Cale's elite guards and advisors worked with a focused efficiency, their underwater skills now adapted to the surface world's needs. The blend of their expertise promised a formidable alliance. Mara and Cale stood together at the center of the activity, their presence commanding the attention of their teams. As they began to formulate their plan, the weight of the conspiracy they were about to unravel was evident in their solemn expressions. Their strategy needed to address every angle of the threat, from identifying key players in the plot to setting up a network of surveillance that could track their movements. Mara outlined the initial steps of the investigation, her voice steady and authoritative. "We'll start by deploying our scouts to monitor known points of interest. We need to gather as much information as possible about the conspirators' activities and affiliations. Our goal is to build a comprehensive picture of their network and uncover their ultimate objective." Cale nodded in agreement, his azure scales catching the morning light as he spoke. "I'll coordinate with my guards to establish secure communication channels. We need to ensure that our intelligence is timely and reliable. Any misstep could expose us to further danger. Let's also consider potential safe houses or hideouts that the conspirators might use." The combined efforts of the two teams quickly took shape as they set up a series of strategic posts and monitoring stations. Maps were spread out, and detailed notes were exchanged as the planning intensified. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of urgency, each member of the alliance aware of the critical nature of their mission. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the ship's preparations continued with a rhythm that matched the rising tide of their resolve. Despite the weight of their mission, there was an underlying sense of camaraderie and mutual respect developing between Mara and Cale's teams. They knew that their combined efforts were the only chance they had to thwart the looming threat. By mid-morning, the Sea Serpent was ready to set sail once again, this time with a clear and coordinated plan. Mara and Cale stood side by side at the helm, their eyes scanning the horizon as the ship left its cove. The dawn's light illuminated their path, casting a hopeful glow on their joint mission as they ventured into the unknown, determined to protect their realms and uncover the truth behind the conspiracy. With their plans set into motion, Mara and Cale braced themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the deck of the Sea Serpent, a stark contrast to the heavy burden of political intrigue that awaited them. Each leader, now attuned to the gravity of their joint mission, prepared to delve deeper into a labyrinth of secrets and deception. Their unity, forged through necessity, would be tested as they ventured into uncharted territories of betrayal and hidden agendas. The complexity of the conspiracy they faced was becoming increasingly clear. The initial revelations were just the tip of the iceberg, Beneath them lay a vast network of plots and hidden motives. Mara's sharp mind and Cale's strategic prowess were both essential to navigating this treacherous terrain. As they reviewed their gathered intelligence, the scale of the plot became more daunting, underscoring the need for unwavering focus and meticulous planning. With a new sense of purpose, Mara and Cale directed their efforts towards the next phase of their investigation. They outlined their objectives with precision, knowing that any misstep could compromise their mission. The Sea Serpent set sail once more, its black sails unfurled against the backdrop of the ocean, a symbol of their relentless pursuit of the truth. The ship's movement mirrored their determination, cutting through the waters with purpose and resolve. As the ship charted its course through the vast and unpredictable ocean, the air was thick with anticipation. The crew, accustomed to Mara's leadership, worked with a renewed vigor, their actions synchronized with Cale's guard's more calculated approach. The blending of their strengths was a testament to their growing alliance, each member of the team aware of their crucial role in uncovering the conspiracy. The horizon stretched out before them, a vast expanse that held both promise and peril. Mara and Cale stood side by side at the helm, their eyes focused on the journey ahead. The challenges they would face were formidable, but their shared commitment to stopping the assassination plot provided a beacon of hope. They understood that the path ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, but their resolve remained unshaken. As they moved forward, the weight of their mission hung heavy, yet they were driven by a singular goal: to thwart the looming disaster and protect their realms. The secrets and lies they had uncovered were just the beginning of a complex and dangerous investigation. United in purpose, Mara and Cale prepared to confront the shadows of betrayal and deceit, determined to unveil the truth before it was too late. Chapter 10: A Tense Partnership. The sun dipped below the horizon, its last rays spilling a golden hue across the deck of the Sea Serpent. The once vibrant daylight faded, giving way to the deepening blue of twilight. Shadows stretched long and dark over the wooden planks, their silhouettes mirroring the growing tension between Mara and Cale. The ship's black sails, now furled against the mast, fluttered slightly in the cool evening breeze, adding a rhythmic backdrop to the uneasy atmosphere that hung between them. As the darkness settled in, it brought a palpable sense of unease, wrapping around the two leaders like a heavy shroud. Mara, standing at the helm, glanced out over the water with a mixture of impatience and resolve. Her sharp gaze cut through the dim light, reflecting her frustration with the slow pace of their investigation. Each creak of the ship's timbers seemed to amplify her growing irritation with the methodical approach that Cale favored. Cale, on the other hand, was leaning against the railing, his azure scales catching the last vestiges of light. The gentle undulation of the water below was a stark contrast to the storm brewing within him. His posture, though regal, carried the weight of responsibility and a deep-seated concern for the complexity of their mission. The calm demeanor he maintained did little to mask the strain of working alongside someone whose methods were so foreign to his own. The gentle rocking of the sea serpent felt almost ironic against the backdrop of their fraught partnership. Every wave that lapped against the hull seemed to echo the discord between Mara's impulsive, action-oriented approach and Cale's meticulous, strategic mindset. The ship's motion provided a sense of continuity and stability that contrasted sharply with the volatility of their interactions. Mara's frustration was evident in the quick, sharp movements as she paced the deck, her boots echoing off the wooden planks. Her eyes, steely and focused, rarely left Cale as she muttered under her breath about the need for immediate action. She was a woman of swift decisions and quick solutions, and the constant need to slow down for the sake of thoroughness was beginning to wear on her. Cale's calm exterior was a thin veneer over the growing strain of working with someone whose approach clashed so fundamentally with his own. He meticulously reviewed their plans and notes, his brow furrowing in concentration. The contrast between his methodical, deliberate nature and Mara's urgency was palpable, and each interaction seemed to heighten the sense of discord between their contrasting worlds. As night fell, the deck of the Sea Serpent became a stage for their uneasy collaboration. Lanterns cast flickering light across their faces, illuminating their tense expressions. The shadows deepened around them, mirroring the complexities of their mission and the struggle to bridge their differences. Every decision they made together was fraught with the challenge of reconciling their disparate approaches. Despite the discord, there was a shared understanding beneath the surface. The stakes of their mission were too high to ignore. Both Mara and Cale were acutely aware that their success depended on overcoming their differences and forging a cohesive partnership. The tension of the night was a testament to their struggle, but it was also a reminder of the critical importance of their combined efforts in the face of the looming threat. Mara stood at the helm of the Sea Serpent, the weight of responsibility etched into her furrowed brow. The lanterns cast a warm, flickering glow on her determined face, highlighting the intensity of her focus as she pored over the latest intelligence reports. The ocean's deep blue stretched endlessly before her, a vast canvas against which her thoughts raced. Her approach to the situation was as sharp and uncompromising as her years spent navigating treacherous waters and outmaneuvering ruthless adversaries. Her method was a reflection of her seasoned experience, decisive and direct. She had spent countless nights at sea, facing unpredictable weather and more treacherous foes, and her strategy was to gather as much information as possible and act with unyielding speed. The intelligence reports were spread out before her, each document a piece of the intricate puzzle they were trying to solve. To Mara, the details mattered, but what mattered more was the ability to act on them before the conspiracy could fully unfold. Her patience was thin, especially in situations that required swift action. As she scanned the reports, her mind worked like a well-oiled machine, moving from one piece of information to the next with a sense of urgency. The gravity of the conspiracy made her increasingly impatient with any form of hesitation or indecision. Every minute spent in deliberation was a minute lost in the race against time to neutralize the looming threat. The constant motion of the Sea Serpent seemed almost to mirror the restless energy Mara exuded. The ship rocked gently, its creaking timbers a reminder of the ever-present danger that accompanied their mission. Her resolve was unwavering, her eyes sharp as she scrutinized every detail for clues that might reveal the conspiracy's next move. The rhythmic sound of the waves lapping against the hull was a steady backdrop to her intense concentration. Mara's straightforward approach was both a strength and a limitation. While her decisiveness was crucial in navigating the dangerous waters of their mission, it also clashed with the more cautious methods employed by her counterpart, Cale. The friction between their styles was palpable, but Mara was singularly focused on the task at hand. Her mind was set on one goal, uncovering and dismantling the conspiracy before it could reach its destructive potential. Her impatience with the slow pace of their investigation was evident in her brisk movements and sharp comments. Each delay seemed to amplify her frustration, fueling her drive to cut through the web of deception with relentless speed. The urgency of their mission left no room for hesitation, and Mara's approach was a testament to her deep-seated belief in the necessity of immediate action. As the night wore on, Mara continued her relentless pursuit of answers. The lantern's glow cast long shadows across the deck, highlighting the determined lines of her face. Her commitment to their mission was evident in every gesture and decision, her experience guiding her through the complexity of the conspiracy. The stakes were high, and for Mara, there was no room for anything but swift, decisive action in the face of looming danger. In stark contrast to Mara's commanding presence, Cale lingered near the edge of the deck, his regal posture a constant reminder of his royal lineage. The moonlight reflected off his azure scales, casting an ethereal glow that seemed almost out of place amidst the rugged environment of the sea serpent. His demeanor was calm and composed, a direct result of his life spent navigating the intricate and shadowy world of Atlantea's political landscape. Cale's approach to the investigation was a study in meticulousness and caution. Each movement he made was deliberate, reflecting a deep-seated need to analyze every detail and weigh every possibility before taking action. This careful, measured approach was born from years of dealing with the hidden dangers of court politics, where a single misstep could have dire consequences. His methodical nature demanded thorough consideration of every potential risk, a stark departure from Mara's more spontaneous style. As he pored over the intelligence reports, Cale's eyes moved with precision, lingering on every scrap of information as if it might hold the key to unlocking the conspiracy. His patience was evident in the slow, deliberate pace with which he sifted through the documents. Each piece of evidence was examined with care, as if he were piecing together a complex tapestry of deceit. The need for accuracy and avoidance of unnecessary risk shaped his every action, setting him apart from the more immediate and action-oriented approach of his counterpart. This careful, deliberate approach stood in sharp contrast to Mara's impulsive style, creating a palpable friction between the two leaders. Where Mara was quick to act and quick to judge, Cale's method was to pause, reflect, and proceed with caution. The tension between their differing methods was evident, each leader's approach a reflection of their distinct backgrounds and experiences. Mara's impatience with delay clashed with Cale's insistence on thoroughness, adding an additional layer of complexity to their partnership. Despite their differing styles, both Mara and Cale were united in their goal, even if their methods were at odds. The friction between them was a constant undercurrent, but it also highlighted the strength each brought to their joint mission. As the night wore on and the sea serpent rocked gently beneath them, the dynamic between the impulsive pirate captain and the meticulous mermaid prince became a crucial element of their efforts to unravel the conspiracy threatening their realms. Cale's voice broke the tense silence, carrying a calm yet firm tone that cut through the growing frustration on the deck. Rushing into things without a full picture can be disastrous, he stated, his eyes fixed on the maps and documents spread out before him. The scattered papers were a testament to the complexity of their investigation, each piece a fragment of the larger puzzle they sought to solve. His expression revealed a blend of frustration and concern, underscoring the gravity of their situation. He stepped closer to the maps, his fingers lightly tracing the lines and markings as if trying to coax more information from the ink and paper. The intricate network of routes and notes was a reflection of their current dilemma, a convoluted web of deceit and danger that demanded careful navigation. Cale's concern was not merely for the immediate mission but for the broader implications of their actions. He understood that a single misstep could have far-reaching consequences. "We need to gather more intel before taking any drastic actions," Cale continued, his gaze sweeping over the documents with a mixture of intensity and deliberation. His voice carried a sense of urgency, though tempered by his cautious nature. The fragments of their findings were critical, but they needed to be pieced together more carefully to avoid misinterpretation or oversight. His insistence on thoroughness was rooted in the understanding that every detail mattered in their fight against the conspiracy. The prophecy warned of deception, he reminded Mara, his tone carrying a note of solemnity. We must be meticulous to avoid falling into traps. The weight of the prophecy loomed over their efforts, a constant reminder of the dangers they faced. Cale's words were not just a caution but a directive born from his experience in navigating the treacherous waters of political intrigue. His focus was on ensuring that every step they took was informed and deliberate, minimizing the risk of being ensnared by their enemies. As he spoke, Cale's demeanor remained composed, though the tension in his posture suggested the depth of his concern. His patience was evident in the careful manner with which he handled the documents, and in the measured tone of his voice. The balance he sought to achieve between caution and action was crucial to their success, and he was determined to maintain it despite the mounting pressure. Mara, listening intently, could see the resolve in Cale's eyes, even if she chafed at the slower pace he advocated. The clash between her more immediate, action-oriented approach and Cale's thorough, methodical style was palpable. Yet, as much as it tested her patience, she recognized the value in his caution. The stakes were too high for recklessness, and Cale's insistence on a meticulous approach was a necessary counterbalance to her own tendencies. Mara's eyes narrowed with frustration as she glanced sharply at Cale. The tension between them was palpable, a clash of urgency against caution. We don't have time for endless deliberation, she snapped, her voice cutting through the air with a sharp edge. Her gaze was fixed on Cale, challenging his cautious approach with the urgency of their situation. Every word she spoke was driven by the pressure of time, each second ticking away as the conspiracy loomed larger. Every moment we waste gives the conspirators more time to execute their plot, she continued, her tone conveying a sense of mounting urgency. Mara's frustration was evident in her posture, her arms crossed tightly as she tried to convey the gravity of their predicament. We need to be proactive, not just reactive, she emphasized, her voice firm and resolute. Her stance was a stark contrast to Cale's methodical pace. To Mara, the situation demanded immediate action, a race against a clock that left little room for hesitation or detailed analysis. Her focus was on the need to disrupt the conspirators' plans before they could fully unfold. Our approach needs to be faster if we're going to prevent this assassination, Mara concluded, her eyes locking onto Cale's with an unwavering intensity. The urgency in her voice was matched by the determination in her expression. She understood the stakes all too well and was adamant that their strategy needed to reflect the critical nature of their mission. The disagreement between Mara and Cale extended beyond mere tactical differences. It was rooted in deep-seated philosophies and contrasting life experiences. On the deck of the Sea Serpent, their discord was evident not only in their heated debates but also in their very demeanor. Mara's years of piracy had shaped her into a decisive leader who trusted her instincts above all else. Her instincts had guided her through countless perilous situations, and she believed in swift, decisive action to stay ahead of any threat. In stark contrast, Cale's upbringing as a prince had instilled in him a different set of values. His life in the opulent and politically charged corridors of Atlanteus Palace had emphasized the importance of strategy, careful planning, and thorough analysis. To him, every move needed to be meticulously calculated to avoid unforeseen pitfalls. His approach was methodical, reflecting his experience in navigating the complex and often treacherous world of royal politics. Each leader viewed the other's methods through a lens of suspicion and skepticism. Mara saw Cale's meticulous planning as a hindrance, a slow and cumbersome process that might miss crucial opportunities to act. Her frustration grew as she perceived his cautious approach as a potential liability that could cost them precious time. On the other hand, Kale regarded Mara's reliance on intuition and rapid decisions as reckless and potentially dangerous. He worried that her approach might lead them into traps they were ill-prepared to handle. As the mission progressed, the divide between their approaches only seemed to widen. Each tactical disagreement was not merely about strategy but also about their fundamental beliefs and how best to handle crises. Their different perspectives created a chasm that threatened to undermine their collaboration, with each leader feeling that the other's methods were incompatible with their goals. Despite their shared objective, the rift between their philosophies made it challenging to forge a unified approach. The tension between Mara's impulsiveness and Kale's caution was a constant undercurrent, affecting their interactions and decisions. As they continued their investigation, the challenge of reconciling these opposing viewpoints became as critical as the mission itself, testing their ability to work together under mounting pressure. As the night wore on, the tension between Mara and Kale became almost palpable, hanging heavily in the air like an oppressive fog. Their interactions were marked by terse exchanges and strained silence, each word and gesture underscored by unspoken frustration. The moon cast its pale light over the deck of the Sea Serpent, highlighting the lines of stress etched into their faces as they struggled to navigate their clashing approaches. The deck was cluttered with maps, notes, and half-empty cups of coffee, the remnants of their long hours of deliberation. Mara paced with restless energy, her sharp eyes darting to the horizon and then back to the documents strewn about. Her movements were abrupt, reflecting her inner turmoil and frustration with the slow pace of their current strategy. Kale, meanwhile, stood apart from the chaos of the deck, his regal posture a stark contrast to the disarray around him. His gaze was fixed on the maps with intense concentration, his fingers tracing over lines and symbols as he sought clarity amidst the confusion. The cool night breeze ruffled his azure scales, and his expression was a mix of concern and resolve, tempered by the constraints of his cautious nature. Despite the visible barrier of their disagreement, there was an underlying current of shared understanding between them. Each was acutely aware of the gravity of their situation, their eyes reflecting the same burning urgency. The stakes they faced were not just personal but monumental, encompassing the fate of both their realms and the lives of countless individuals. Their differing methodologies were a constant source of friction, yet beneath the surface, there was a mutual recognition of their common goal. Both Mara and Kale were driven by an unyielding commitment to protect their kingdoms and prevent the unfolding disaster that loomed over them. This shared objective, however fraught with conflict, bound them together in a fragile partnership. The complexity of the conspiracy they sought to unravel was becoming increasingly apparent, and the stakes grew higher with each passing hour. The weight of their mission pressed down on them, making the strain between their divergent approaches even more pronounced. Yet, despite their frequent clashes, neither could deny the necessity of working together. As the night deepened and the stars shimmered overhead, Mara and Kale found themselves at a crossroads. Their partnership, though tested by conflict, remained their only chance to uncover the truth behind the conspiracy and safeguard their futures. The path forward was fraught with challenges, but their mutual determination to see their mission through provided a glimmer of hope amidst the turmoil. In the dim light of the moon and the flickering lanterns, the two leaders continued their uneasy collaboration. Their interactions were marked by a blend of tension and reluctant respect, a testament to the complex nature of their alliance. Despite the difficulties, the shared goal of protecting their realms kept them moving forward, united in their resolve to face the threats that lay ahead. As the first stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, their faint twinkle offering a distant promise of hope, Mara and Kale faced the pressing need to bridge the gap between their conflicting approaches. The serenity of the night contrasted sharply with the tension that lay between them, a reminder of the stakes riding on their ability to find common ground. The success of their mission hinged on their capacity to unite their disparate strengths and overcome the barriers of mutual distrust. The deck of the Sea Serpent was quiet, save for the soft creak of wood and the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. The weight of the night seemed to press down on them, intensifying the challenge of reconciling their differing methods. Mara, with her decisive and instinctive style, and Cale, with his methodical and cautious approach, were both acutely aware that their success depended on blending their strengths rather than allowing their differences to derail their efforts. As they continued their uneasy collaboration, each moment of interaction was a test of their patience and willingness to compromise. The frustration of their conflicting strategies was evident, yet there was an undercurrent of determination driving them forward. The complexity of their mission demanded more than just individual skills. It required a seamless integration of their unique approaches to navigate the intricate web of conspiracy and danger they faced. The night deepened, casting a cloak of shadows over the deck, and the stars above seemed to mirror the challenge that lay before them. Mara and Cale knew that their ability to work together would be the key to unraveling the conspiracy and securing their realms. Their partnership, though fraught with difficulty, held the promise of success if they could overcome their mutual distrust and harness their combined strengths.